It's impossible to thank everyone that is responsible for this achievement which is about to begin. And earlier, the major contributors to it have already been mentioned anyway, so I'm not going to mention any names other than Reese Schonfields, and what a tremendous job he and his people have done, and what tremendous support we've had from our friends in the cable industry, from the advertising community, from the press of America in general, and from my family and everyone else. I want to say thank you. You'll notice out in front of me that we've raised 3 flags. One, the state of Georgia, where we're located. Second, the United States flag, of course, which represents our country and the way we intend to serve it with the cable news network. And over on the other side, we have the flag of the United Nations, because we hope that the cable news network, with its international coverage and greater depth coverage, will bring, both in the country and in the world, a better understanding of how people from different nations live and work together, and within the nation work together, so that we can perhaps, hopefully, bring together in brotherhood and kindness and friendship and in peace the people of this nation and this world. I'm now going to read a little poem that was written by Ed Kessler of dedication. To act upon one's convictions while others wait, to create a positive force in a world where cynics abound, to provide information to people when it wasn't available before, to offer those who want it a choice. For the American people, whose thirst for understanding and a better life has made this venture possible. For the cable industry, whose pioneering spirit caused this great step forward in communications. And for those employees of Turner Broadcasting, whose total commitment to their company has brought us together today, I dedicate the news channel for America, the cable news network. And now if we could have the presentation of colors, then we'll have the national anthem. Thank you very much. Everyone will stand for the presentation of the colors, please.
Montreal, Paris, Tulsa, Denver, London, Canton, Newark, Peking, Moline, San Diego, Reno, Nicaragua, San Francisco, Seoul, Perth, the Marianne, the United Nations, Vienna, Buffalo, Lima, Kiribati, Islamabad, Decatur, Nashville, Jamaica, Jonestown, Chicago, Weatherford, Topeka, Tokyo, Madison, Fort Worth, Fort Wayne, Warsaw, Bangor.
Ready, camera 1, box. Take 11, Mike cue him. To New York.
Good afternoon from the World Trade Center.
Stand by, ready 3, take 3, Mike cue. 3, start to slow zoom in a little bit. Roll tape, take 3. Ready 13, full. Ready, camera 3, 1 center up.
Good evening, I'm David Walker.
And I'm Lois Hart. Now here's the news. President Carter has arrived in Fort Wayne, Indiana for a brief visit with civil rights leader Vernon Jordan. Jordan is in serious but stable condition now at Parkview Hospital. He is recuperating from the gunshot wound suffered early Thursday morning. Police still have no solid lead on who attempted to murder Jordan. We'll have more on the president's visit later on in the hour. But first, Richard Bloom takes a look at how the small town in Indiana is handling the shooting of a prominent black leader.
Since the civil rights leader was shot early Thursday morning, government officials in Fort Wayne and leaders of the black community have worked hard to project the image of a city united in its concern for Vernon Jordan's recovery and in its determination to catch whoever committed the crime. So far, the approach has worked. Despite the potential for racial violence, Fort Wayne has been quiet. At a vigil for Jordan, the mayor voiced a theme of restraint and prayer.
And if I've learned one thing today, it is that with all of the help that we've received, when you get down to tonight, to this moment, here in this church, and we think of Vernon Jordan, and we think of the city of Fort Wayne, the thing that's left is prayer.
We shall all be free someday. Oh, give him my all. I do believe we shall overcome someday.
Over the last 4 days, officials here have worked hard to inform the city and the rest of the country of Jordan's medical progress and the status of the police investigation. They want to dispel rumors which could inflame the community. Black leaders formed an ad hoc committee to provide information and show their support.
Monday, there will be formal announcement concerning the Vernon Jordan Reward Fund. At that time, we will establish a fund whereas citizens in the Fort Wayne area and across the nation may be able to send the money to our fund to offer a reward for the apprehension and capture and conviction of that person or persons that may have perpetrated this crime.
Despite the support of black leaders and countless hours of police work, local, state, and federal law officers have made little progress in finding out who shot Vernon Jordan and why. Police are watching their step in the face of national attention.
I'm requesting all police personnel within the next 48 hours to be courteous, cooperative, and diplomatic. Any action of any officer in any manner will definitely make the national headlines. We're professionals. We want to project a professional image, both as police officers and on the city in general. Signed, Leon Wolf, Chief of Police.
One civil rights leader here said the sniper shooting of Vernon Jordan put Fort Wayne under a national microscope. So far, despite the potential for violence, there has been none. And it appears that this community has held together despite all the national attention. Richard Blome, Cable News Network in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
The FBI and Fort Wayne police are at odds over the Vernon Jordan investigation. Published reports from Fort Wayne say the FBI thinks a single shot was fired at Jordan. When we checked with Fort Wayne police this morning, they told us that is not the case. The FBI bases the single bullet theory on the idea that a chain-link fence deflected the shot, saving Jordan's life, and also leading doctors to believe that more than one shot had been fired. Fort Wayne police say that cannot be true. They say fragments taken from Jordan and his car make that all impossible. Until proven wrong, the police are saying they are sticking to a two-bullet theory. In New London, Connecticut, police say a man apparently upset over a family problem went on a shooting spree aboard an Amtrak train en route from Washington to Boston. A passenger and an Amtrak policeman were wounded critically. The conductor was also shot. He's reported in stable condition. 29-year-old Frank Banks has been arrested and charged with attempted murder. Banks is unemployed. Police say he has had family problems. Lois?
New York Yankees slugger Reggie Jackson has a close call. A man fired a gunshot at the baseball player over an argument over a parking space. Jackson was not injured. The man now is under arrest. Our New York bureau has more on this and other stories.
The Yankees' home run king had a hard night on the baseball diamond last night, but it was nothing compared to what he encountered on a dark New York street a few hours after the game. Reggie Jackson had gone out partying to some of his favorite bars, and for good reason. It was his 11th inning home run that clinched the victory for the Yankees last night over the Toronto Blue Jays. Jackson, who frequents the singles bars in this posh Manhattan neighborhood, was looking for a parking place when a car blocked his way. He asked the driver to move, and he did. Then witnesses say a passenger in the car started yelling four-letter words and racial slurs at Jackson and threw at least one broken bottle at Jackson's car. Two men on the street, recognizing the Yankees' star slugger, joked with him about going after the guy. Then the joke ended. The man, identified as 25-year-old Angel Vieira, is accused of pulling a .38 caliber revolver and opening fire. 3 shots zinged past Jackson. Each missed its mark. Vieira has been charged with attempted murder and illegal possession of a deadly weapon. After the incident, Jackson was hustled by police to a nearby restaurant, questioned. He says he'll cooperate with the investigation, but hopes it's...
We're apparently having a little problem in New York. We'll go on with the news now. Tomorrow would have been the last day in the life of mass murderer John Gacy, but instead the man convicted of more murders than any other person in American history will spend his execution date inside prison in southern Illinois while his case is appealed. Gacy was sentenced to death for murdering 33 boys and young men, but he could be in prison for years while all the appeals are exhausted. Gacy's attorneys have filed for more than $48,000 in defense expenses.
Meanwhile, Mount St. Helens has its first quiet Sunday in several weeks now. Smoke continues to pour out of the mountain's top, but little or no ash is coming out with the steam. The volcano has been quiet for the last several days, and federal officials say they hope that the worst is finally over. It was 2 Sundays ago when the mountain blew its top, killing at least 33 people and causing more than $1 billion in damage. Last Sunday, another massive cloud of ash blew out of that mountain, but this Sunday, the volcano has been calm. At least one person says he is sure the mountain has gone through its worst activity, at least so far. 75-year-old Ray Jennings, who was in his cabin just 8 miles from the mountaintop when it had exploded, says he knows the mountain will remain quiet. Although Jennings thinks it's safe to stay in his home, relatives aren't quite so sure, and they aren't quite convincing him that the mountain will stay quiet. After days of trying, they finally convinced Jennings yesterday, however, to finally leave his mountain home.
The lives of airline passengers and crews may be unnecessarily endangered by inaccurate fuel gauging systems and lax training procedures. There is evidence the problem already has taken some lives and threatened many others. Despite the evidence, the Federal Aviation Administration claims the matter is not serious. CNN's Washington correspondent Joe Pennington has the results of a major investigative report.
Involved are fuel gauging systems found on almost every commercial airliner flown in this country. The accuracy of those gauging systems has been called seriously into question by a disturbing trend in airline incidents, and in one case, an airline crash. Pan Am's Flight 2 last October was a giant Boeing 747. It was destined for New York's Kennedy Airport from Houston. But because of poor weather in New York, the plane was diverted to Newark. Just seconds after the jumbo jet touched Newark's runway, 2 of its engines ran out of fuel and quit. A 3rd engine quit before the plane reached the terminal. The 747 and its 241 occupants were towed to the gate. The Federal Aviation Administration investigated and concluded that an inaccurate fuel chart on board Flight 2 was primarily responsible for the incident. But the FAA admits that inaccurate fuel gauges contributed to the potentially tragic situation.
We have determined that there was a slight gauge error of approximately 2,200 pounds. You burn about 18 to 20,000 pounds an hour at cruising altitude in the local area. So you would figure that's maybe 10 minutes worth, something like that. The Boeing company issued on February 15th an operations manual change outlining fuel requirements and some of the problems with fuel gauge errors and things of this nature.
The FAA itself has taken no action which requires any mechanical changes with respect to the fuel gauging systems.
I'm not aware of any required change.
Pan Am would not comment on the incident involving Flight 2, but the fuel gauging problem does not appear limited to either Pan Am or to the Boeing 747. Within weeks of our investigation into the issue, the nation's largest pilots' union issued this notice. It cautioned pilots to anticipate major errors and inaccuracies in fuel gauge indications on DC-8, DC-9, DC-10, 707, 727, 737, 747, and L-1011 aircraft. United Airlines Flight 173, just over 18 months ago, was a McDonnell Douglas DC-8 flying from Denver to Portland.
United 173 Heavy, Mayday, Mayday. The engines are flaming out. We're going down. We're not going to be able to make the airport.
10 people died here. Another 23 were seriously injured. Flight 173 ran out of fuel before it could reach Portland's runway. It had burned precious fuel in a holding pattern because of landing gear difficulties. But Captain Buddy McBroom was still sure he had plenty of fuel to make the runway.
I lost fire on the last engine, and I had to maneuver the airplane some to get lined up with this patch of trees. I can remember seeing the huge, the tops of these huge evergreens going by the cockpit windows, and that's the last I remember.
The National Transportation Safety Board investigated. It concluded that Captain McBroom was responsible for the crash. In the board's words, the probable cause of the accident was the failure of the captain to monitor properly the aircraft's fuel state and to properly respond to the low-level fuel state.
Didn't the fuel gauges tell you that your fuel was going to hell?
No. The fuel gauges indicated that we had more than adequate fuel on board to complete the procedure in the cabin and descend to and land at the airport.
At least some NTSB staff members privately agree with Captain McBroom. A review of Flight 173's cockpit voice recorder, they say, shows McBroom and his crew were worried enough about fuel to have discussed it at least 10 times in the 29 minutes before their crash. But in its final report, the NTSB implied that McBroom failed to take into account the tolerances of his fuel gauges when he calculated the amount of fuel he would need to reach Portland's runway.
United Airlines taught me many things, and I've learned a lot of other things on my own. But United Airlines never taught me, nor any other airplane crew, that there are allowable tolerances in the fuel quantity indicating system on any of its airplanes.
3 months after the crash of Flight 173, United Airlines issued this addition to its DC-8 flight manual. Many United Airlines pilots tell cable news it was the first time they'd ever heard of fuel gauge tolerance. And some United pilots say they'd complained to United safety officials about DC-8 fuel gauge problems months before the Portland crash. United Airlines won't comment. Fuel gauging errors are not limited to the United Airlines crash we've been discussing or to the Pan Am emergency at Newark. Cable News has learned of 4 other recent incidents involving airline planes which ran out of fuel just seconds after landing. Only weeks after Captain McBroom's crash, another United Airlines jet put down in Portland with a defective fuel gauge. These are notes on fuel gauging difficulties in Honolulu and Iceland. And this is a Braniff Airways Boeing 747 with fuel gauge irregularities en route to Hong Kong. Federal aviation sources tell Cable News that we've just scratched the surface, that there are many more fuel problems we don't even know about.
All your operational decisions, I'm not talking about an emergency situation, all your your operational decisions, which take place on every segment of every trip almost daily, nightly, are based on the assumption that your gauges are accurate.
The heavier a plane is, the more costly it is to fly. Eastern Airlines has actually stripped paint from its planes to reduce weight in the face of ever-rising fuel costs. All major airlines now cut airplane fuel reserves to what they consider a safe minimum. But these reduced fuel reserves make accurate fuel gauging all the more important. Hundreds of lives have been seriously endangered by inaccurate fuel gauging systems. Millions more may have been exposed to them. The people charged with protecting your safety on commercial airliners, the FAA, says it's not all that significant. That position becomes harder to defend as more fuel gauge discrepancies continue to occur. Joe Pennington, Cable News, Washington.
Candidates make a final run at the primaries this Tuesday. We'll look at that story and much more when the News Channel continues.
There are many medications for acid indigestion or heartburn relief. Which one is right for you? For years, Maalox has been recommended most by doctors. Now, the antacid ingredients in here, plus an extra ingredient, are in Maalox Plus tablets. Really pleasant tasting and effective. And Maalox Plus tablets also come in this handy pocket pack that keeps them fresh and sanitary. Maalox Plus for acid indigestion or heartburn relief. But don't just take my word for it. Try Maalox Plus tablets. You'll find you can't do better.
Clinton, Colorado. The sun hammers your eyes to a tight squint and cracks your throat with a dry, parched-out thirst. But one thing washes it clean. Nestea.
All over. Nestea tastes good all over. Nestea tastes.
And with Shirley.
Fort Wayne, Indiana, and is now meeting with reporters. We now switch live to Fort Wayne, Indiana.
But today, again, I've been given a very accurate report from his own physicians that he's recovering well. His strength and his good health, his athletic attitude and ability have stood him in good stead, along with the prayers of tens of thousands of people who believe in Vernon and who admire him very much, and who've been concerned about him, and also, of course, the excellent care that he's gotten here in this superb hospital facility. I've also had a chance to meet with the mayor, with the police officials from the local government, and with the director of the FBI regional headquarters here in Fort Bend. And I think it's very good to point out that we have excellent cooperation, and that they are getting along well with each other. The local officials are very grateful that the FBI is involved in the investigation of the case, and I'm not going to comment on the progress of the investigation, except to point out to you that there is nothing in their relationship except one of mutual appreciation and the very closest possible cooperation. The mayor of Fort Wayne and others have done a superb job in making all the local officials available in this heavy burden on the community. And the attitude of the people along the highway as I came in from the airport was one of friendship and encouragement, which shows the deep concern of the people about this unfortunate incident, and the hope that Vernon Jordan will do well and recover completely, which is a high prospect now, and that the perpetrators of this crime will be brought to justice. It's obvious that what Vernon Jordan stands for, his courage, his commitment to the plight of the poor and deprived people of all races, has been appreciated by this nation. And as president, I want to add my personal appreciation for what he has meant for our country and what he will continue to mean in the years ahead. Mr. Mayor, would you like to add any word? Yeah. We talked about the necessity for him to carry out the doctor's orders and directions. He gave me a report that he's getting along well, that he has received indirectly an outpouring of expressions of support and friendship and prayers from throughout the country. He has now been permitted to watch television. He can't have visitors outside of just myself and a few others in his family. He's not yet begun to read newspapers and so forth, but he will understand tomorrow. And he, of course, doesn't have a telephone in his room. But he's interested in the continued progress of the Urban League. While he is incapacitated, has complete confidence that it will be done. He primarily expressed his thanks to me for the outpouring of support and help for him and his family that has been exhibited here in Fort Wayne and throughout the state of Indiana and indeed the country.
Mr. President, did you think against that it was conspiracy?
I don't have any information that I want to divulge concerning the criminal investigation. I think that's best described by the legal officials.
Well, Mr. President, you called it the other day an attempted assassination.
Yes.
What does that word mean to you? Does it mean political? Does it rule out personal motives? What did you mean by that?
Well, after I got home, I looked it up in the dictionary because some question had been raised by the press. It said the attempted murder of a prominent person. And this is all I meant. I was not trying to define the nature of the crime, except that a prominent person was the subject of an attack.
You weren't referring to motive at all.
I have no way to know what the motive is.
Mr. President, you just said that you hope that the perpetrators are brought to justice. You used the word plural. Does that reflect a belief by the Justice Department that there's still a feeling that there may be more than one person involved?
No, I was not trying to determine how many there might be.
Mr.
One or more.
Vernon Jordan has always traveled alone, without security, says that's an American way, you ought to be able to do that. Did you give him any advice to the contrary, or do you feel he's wrong? And also, is there any national coordinated efforts to protect civil rights leaders right now?
No, there is no national coordinated effort to protect prominent people who are active in the civil rights movement. This, I don't believe, is necessary now. Those people who are prominent and also courageous in dealing with controversial issues are always a possible subject of attack, but this is something I've not discussed with Vernon as far as providing help or protection for other civil rights leaders. I don't think it is necessary at this time.
Mr. President, did he
Yes,
say
sir.
anything to you about the circumstances of the shooting? What happened? Did he discuss the shooting from his side?
Just very briefly. Well, I think the only comment that he made was that with people who are involved in public life like he has been, that the possibility of an attack is something that one has to understand and accept. That the alternative is a withdrawal of one's service, that it was a danger that he was willing to accommodate in his own life, and that he was very thankful that the attack was not successful.
Mr. President, do you think that this is in any way related to the events in Miami?
I don't have any reason to think that there is a relationship.
Mr. President, just 8 hours before the shooting, Mr. Jordan gave local reporters here the impression that he was sort of challenging leaders in this country to try to address problems, mainly domestic problems. Was there any mention of any assurances that you might try to give into there be another 4 years of your administration?
No, we didn't discuss that, but I observed very carefully Vernon's statements. I've known him for a long time. When he was in charge of voter registration in the southeastern region of our country, he was living in Atlanta. I was a state senator then. Vernon was planning to run for Congress from the 5th District in Georgia. I was planning to run for governor. We both wound up with different positions later on. And Vernon has sometimes been a very severe critic of policies of the federal government, actions of the Congress, actions by me, or failure to move rapidly enough to alleviate the concerns of the poor people about whom he's concerned. But at the same time, we've always maintained our friendship. And I'm familiar with Vernon's speeches, a major thrust of them. I listen to them very carefully. When I've made decisions in my own administration as president concerning
Well, you see the president just speaking moments ago, live from Fort Wayne, Indiana, meeting with reporters after meeting with Mr. Vernon Jordan in this hospital, still recovering from bullet wounds suffered in an attack earlier this week. The President, we had to interrupt that so that we can take a feed live from the Mideast momentarily. 2 days from today, the nation's presidential primary season comes to an end on June the 3rd. 9 states will be holding their primaries. Super Tuesday, as it's called, could make or break the hopes of President Carter and Senator Ted Kennedy. 21% of the Democratic delegates will be chosen on that day, Super Tuesday. The 3 most important primaries in terms of delegates are California, Ohio, and New Jersey. New Mexico, Rhode Island, South Dakota, West Virginia, and Montana are also voting that day. Together, there are 696 delegates at stake, 580 from California, Ohio, and New Jersey alone. President Carter is 105 votes short of the number he needs for the nomination. That number is 1,666. The Republican primaries, of course, will be anticlimactic for Ronald Reagan. His last remaining foe, George Bush, pulled out of the race.
For Cable News Network's inaugural broadcast, President Carter was earlier interviewed by CNN's senior Washington correspondent Daniel Shore and our managing editor George Watson. During the interview taped yesterday, Shore asked the president why he is refusing to debate John Anderson.
What is the Anderson threat? Is it the fear that he may rob both you and Reagan of the margin of victory and throw this election into the House?
I mean, I don't look on it as a particular threat, although it's obvious to me that whatever strength politically Anderson might have in November, it will come at my expense more and will help Reagan. But the essence of it is I just don't feel inclined to debate 2 Republicans, and they're both Republicans.
Mr. President, South Korea, a military dictatorship, 40,000 American troops there. Does our national security interests give us any alternative to supporting yet another unpopular and repressive military regime there?
We have 2 considerations in South Korea that have always affected our policy. They've not changed. One is the security of South Korea from external aggression, primarily from the North Koreans. And secondly, the enhancement of the democratic processes, the protection of human rights, and the move toward a democracy in South Korea. The security commitment has not been shaken. We and the South Koreans and others monitor very closely any potential threat from North Korea. And there is no doubt in my mind that our forces and the South Korean forces are adequately strong to repel any potential invasion or threat to Korean security.
The news channel will present the entire hour-long interview with the president beginning at 9 o'clock Eastern Time tonight.
And for more comments made by the president today, here's Bernard Shaw in our Washington studio.
Also in that cable news interview, President Carter says the housing and automobile industries, in fact the entire national economy, will be stimulated by a reduction in the inflation rate. The president said beginning this summer, inflation will start falling, much the way interest rates have been coming down recently. And very pointedly, the president told cable news interviewers George Watson and Daniel Shore, "I don't think that we're going to have the deepest and most severe recession since World War II." In another network interview today, President Carter told CBS's Face the Nation that he has no plans to reduce the level of American troops in Europe as a money-saving measure. Defense Secretary Harold Brown is in Europe this weekend, conferring with NATO allies. In London tomorrow, he'll meet with British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and top British defense officials before going to Norway for a conference with the NATO Nuclear Planning Group. The Pentagon says 1,800 Marines sent to the Indian Ocean after the Iranian and Afghanistani crises have been withdrawn. A spokesman says the Marines may be sent back if needed. Notwithstanding that, the Pentagon says sometime this month, 7 cargo ships will sail into the area carrying heavy equipment for a Marine brigade. Meanwhile, officials say the United States is negotiating with Egypt to station F-15 fighter planes there, and reportedly, the Pentagon is reasonably close to securing airfields and ports in 2 other countries, Kenya and Oman. And that's the latest from our Cable News Bureau in Washington.
In New York today, a march to show support for the state of Israel. Thousands of people waving Israeli flags marched down Fifth Avenue in the 25th annual Salute to Israel. Marching bands, floats, and groups of children flowing down the street. The parade is sponsored by the American Zionist Youth Foundation and was first held in 1965 to express American support for the Israeli state. Thousands more lined the streets during the parade, cheering and shouting expressions of support. Members of the Israeli consulate in New York also participated in the parade.
In Israel today, Prime Minister Menachem Begin met with his cabinet to work out political problems now facing his government. CNN's Jay Bashinsky is in Jerusalem. We now go to him live for a report on the situation.
It's 12:35 a.m. here in Jerusalem, and we've been following the fast-moving Israeli political crisis throughout the day for this first live satellite transmission to the cable news network. Israel's cabinet assembled for a crucial session that would determine Prime Minister Begin's chances of staying in office. Prime Minister Begin's survival was undermined by the stormy resignation last week of Ezer Weizmann as defense minister. Begin succeeded in keeping his fractious coalition together by taking over the defense post himself for the time being. The government apparently is preparing for the imminent resumption of negotiations with Egypt and the U.S. on Palestinian autonomy. To that end, it welcomed President Carter's remarks made in an exclusive interview with the cable news network that a Western European diplomatic intervention would complicate the negotiating process at this time.
Expression of appreciation to the President of the United States and to the Secretary of State for their position regarding the European initiative and the American unequivocal readiness to veto any such a proposal that might prejudice Resolution 242, which forms the basis of the Camp David Agreement.
The first hint that Begin was taking over the defense portfolio came when he announced that Israel would not withdraw from the rest of Sinai unless a multinational peacekeeping force was organized to police the buffer zone along the Egyptian-Israeli border, as stipulated in the Camp David Accords and peace treaty. The weekend threat upset the Egyptians, who asked for clarifications from Israel's ambassador Ben Elisar in Cairo. Begin's bombshell may actually have been meant to hit back at Weizmann by inferring that his arch-rival failed to press for quick establishment of the peacekeeping force. Even if Begin resolves the coalition conflict, he will still face pressure to step down. Weizmann will go on fighting him within their Likud party or by organizing a new party that might include some of Israel's most popular figures, such as ex-Foreign Minister Dayan. He, too, quit in disapproval over Begin's handling of the Palestinian autonomy talks. Begin's remaining ministers could easily bring down the government over the proposed cabinet reshuffle, but this might be tantamount to political suicide for many of them. As for the Prime Minister, he is determined to fill out his term through mid-1981, but this will not be an easy task for the ailing Israeli leader. This is Jay Bushinsky for the Cable News Network in Jerusalem.
Obviously, the issue of settlements on Israel's West Bank continues to be a point of controversy. The settlements are opposed by the U.S. and Egypt and are described as a barrier to a full Mideast peace agreement. Despite that, many American families are planning a move to Israel to help build a new settlement in that troubled region. We have the story now from New York.
Bernard and Raquel Welt are an Orthodox Jewish couple married just over a year. Raquel expecting her first child this month. Her husband earns about $10,000 a year as a garment wholesaler in New York, enough to afford a comfortable garden apartment and 2 cars. But sometime soon, the couple plans to sacrifice their middle-class comforts for a life of hard labor in the Mideast. They are among 230 American Zionist families who plan to build a pioneering settlement in the barren soil of Efrat, a West Bank settlement near Hebron, where Palestinian gunmen massacred several other Jewish settlers early in May. The U.S. government views new settlements in the disputed territory as illegal, but to Bernie and Raquel, it's the dream of a lifetime, even if the Carter administration disapproves.
I'm not happy with a lot of American policy, not just in terms of Israel. I'm not happy with President Carter either. I didn't vote for him and certainly will not vote for him in this election. And I don't like his policies in general, and I also do not like his policies regarding Israel. I don't feel that I have to listen to what he has to say. He doesn't approve of the settlements in Israel. I'm aware of that. It doesn't mean to me that I shouldn't go. It doesn't discourage me. His reasons are not completely valid to me.
What do you expect you will find there when you get there?
We expect to be pioneers in a sense. It's right now it's a barren piece of land. It's all rocks. We expect to build a city, and we invite people to come and join us.
Why do you want to go and live in a barren, rocky area that is not only a danger zone, but many Israelis say it's controversial?
At the moment, it is not occupied by anybody. It's occupied by a lot of rocks and some trees and shrubbery. If we had to evict a lot of families, Arab families that were living there now, they would be very upset and would be inciting them, and it would be much more volatile. But it isn't the situation. It isn't like Hebron, where people went in and took over buildings that had been in their family before, and when the family was massacred, but now was being occupied by Arabs. So I agree with Bernie. I don't see this as the kind of community that's going to have to be maintained by barbed wire and constant surveillance of guns.
Few, if any, of the Zionist couples moving to the West Bank say they intend to renounce their American citizenship. They will remain Jewish Americans. And if the Carter administration continues to take a dim view of the settlements, they say, so be it. Becoming pioneer settlers on the West Bank, they say, is the strongest statement they could make, that Israel belongs to the Jewish people. In Queens, New York, this is Barry Cunningham reporting for the Cable News Network.
We're going to have a live report from Key West on the Cuban refugees when the news channel continues.
Now, Time Life Books brings you the Good Cook series. It's a fabulous collection of recipes, plus all the step-by-step how-to-do-it skills to make them. In poultry, you'll learn boning and braising, how to cut for economy and carve with confidence. Cut corners on time and trouble and cost, but never on quality. Always starting from scratch with the freshest natural ingredients and finishing up beautifully. In soups, you'll study stocks and stews and everything from slow simmering to deep freezing. Vegetables will teach you seasonal shopping, herbs and marinades, and quick steaming and stuffing, and stir-frying. When you complete the Good Cook series, you'll know rice and spice, poaching and pickling, what golden brown looks like, how to do every kind of cooking easier, faster, and better. And to show off your new skills, we've gathered thousands of recipes from the best cookbooks from Manhattan to Morocco. So you can make chicken Kiev like a Russian, authentic Wiener Schnitzel, and a cherry pie George would love. Make more interesting salads, lighter cakes, and heartier breads, simple suppers, and fabulous feasts. We'll send you poultry for a free 10-day examination, along with this marvelous 48-page guide to kitchen tools and equipment, yours to keep if you decide to purchase poultry. If you and your family aren't thrilled with poultry, you can return these books within 10 days and owe nothing. If you keep poultry, you'll pay just $9.95 plus shipping and handling. Then, approximately every other month, you'll receive a new volume of the Good Cook series for the same 10-day free examination. There's no minimum number to buy, and you may cancel at any time. Each is only $9.95 plus shipping and handling, and they'll make you a good cook for life.
To order your subscription to the Good Cook series, call toll-free 1-800-257-1257. In New Jersey, call 800-232-6966. Each book for $9.95 will be sent on a 10-day approval every other month.
Here's what's happening at this moment. President Carter flew to Fort Wayne today to meet with the wounded civil rights leader, Vernon Jordan. Carter sought to portray the efforts of the Fort Wayne police and the FBI as a united effort to find the man who shot Jordan. Earlier today, there were reports saying the local police and the FBI have been disagreeing on how many shots were fired. The president said Jordan was in good spirits when he met with him. An Arab economist says Saudi Arabia plans to hike oil prices and cut back production to stabilize OPEC prices. After that, Saudi Arabia will try to get OPEC to freeze oil prices for the rest of the year. In Israel, Prime Minister Menachem Begin averts a political crisis by assuming the post of defense minister. He's looking for a suitable replacement for Ezer Weizmann. President Carter said in an interview with CNN that Ted Kennedy is a good Democrat. We'll have the complete interview later this evening. And thousands of people marched in the streets of New York to show support for Israel. We'll have that story and more as the news channel continues.
Nicaragua is a Latin American country in political turmoil these days. Anti-American sentiment is said to be widespread, and since the revolution to overthrow dictator Somoza nearly a year ago, hate for the United States has grown stronger. This week, Congress is scheduled to consider appropriating $75 million in aid to Nicaragua. The bill has been hotly debated because many congressmen don't want to help a Marxist country. Recently, CNN's Kathleen Sullivan flew to Nicaragua to find out what is happening there. This week, we'll have a series of reports about the country and its people and what the $75 million might mean to Nicaragua. Linda Lovelace, the star of the pornographic movie Deep Throat, is joining other feminists in calling for theater owners to stop showing that movie. Speaking in Manhattan yesterday, Lovelace said that she was beaten and forced to do the film by her ex-husband. She said her former movie career and reputation has caused her a lot of anguish. And the former child star of Lassie is under arrest in California on drug charges. Tommy Redding was booked for conspiracy to operate a laboratory for refining and purifying, I should say, cocaine. And now with the latest look at the weather, here's Dallas Raines at the weather desk. Dallas?
Thank you, Dave and Lois, and good afternoon, everyone. Yesterday, we had all the heavy rain in Nebraska, and it's moved now eastward in the Mississippi Valley. We're going to be watching that for you. We have the latest satellite photograph that's going to show you some heavy showers and thunderstorms that have now moved into the Ohio Valley. Also, more rain is expected to move into Nebraska later tonight as another wave of low pressure moving along that front. You can see that low pressure system now that is swirling through Wisconsin, causing the cloudiness, also the heavy thunderstorms which are now in that area. The low pressure system will move to the north into Canada, and the moisture, which is now coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, is causing the heavy rains, raining now in Detroit, and also some heavy rain expected to go on back into the eastern sections of Wisconsin later tonight and tomorrow. Low pressure is expected to come up through that area during the next 24 hours, and we'll be watching that for you. There you can see that front, which is now right here, just the western portions of Pennsylvania, runs into the Ohio Valley. Heavy showers and thunderstorms in that area. Detroit now, some rain, 59 degrees. I expect this low to move on to the northeast, and this area of cloudiness to continue toward the east, causing heavy rains later for portions of Pennsylvania. Now, if all that's not enough, it's also the first day of the 1980 hurricane season, and we're looking on a special GOES satellite photograph just into CNN. You can see the cloudiness which stretches across the Atlantic Ocean. There is a lot of thunderstorms down around Jamaica, some heavy thunderstorms there, but the pressure surfaces are high, and I do not expect this area to develop into the first hurricane of the season, which will be Alan. Alan will be the first storm. We move into the second year of male names for hurricanes, and so Alan will be the first one, but we do not expect that over the next couple of days. Let's look now at the forecast for several cities around the country. New York, the thunderstorms moving in there for tomorrow, the high of 86. St. Louis will have thunderstorms again tomorrow, the high of 87. Hot down in Dallas with sunny skies, a high of 94. And Honolulu will have sunny skies with a high of 85. That's a look at the weather. Now back over to the anchor desk.
Thank you, Dallas. Coming up on the News Channel, looks like the good old days of gasoline wars are coming back, and an explosion rocks an oil company in London.
Do you know me? In places like this, I'm not always recognized. That's one reason I carry the American Express card. It really comes in handy on vacations for hotels, car rentals, ski equipment, and tennis lessons. After all, man does not live by golf alone.
To apply for an American Express card, look for this display wherever the card is welcomed.
The American Express card. Don't leave home without it.
How many cold tablets do you take a day? 2?
More.
4?
More.
6?
Yes, 6.
A day? And then more at night? Why?
They're new.
Ever try Contact?
No.
Watch. One Contact helps relieve your congestion for up to 12 hours without the aspirin substitute and cough suppressant in these. Just one more Contact helps you all night while you sleep.
You're the guys on TV.
Give your cold to Contact.
This mixture kills over 25,000 people every year. If you drive a car, think about that.
Here's what's happening up to this moment. President Carter flew to Fort Wayne, Indiana today to meet with the wounded civil rights leader Vernon Jordan. Carter sought to portray the efforts of the Fort Wayne police and the FBI as a united one to find the man who shot Jordan. President Carter says Senator Kennedy's challenge to his re-election bid is good for the Democratic Party. The Pentagon withdraws 1,800 Marines it sent to the Arabian Sea. The troops were part of a military buildup following the Iran and Afghan crises. Saudi Arabia will try to get oil producers to freeze their prices for the rest of the year. Pickets are playing jazz outside the London headquarters of the BBC. The musicians are on strike against plans to disband 5 BBC orchestras. And coming up, details on a bomb explosion in London. That and more as the news continues.
Rough seas in the Florida Straits kept the Cuban refugees out of their boats today. CNN's Mike Vetcher is in Key West right now, and he says there's little activity in the port. For more on the story right now, let's go live to Key West.
The docks at the Truman Annex Naval Base are empty at this hour. In fact, the last boat to arrive here arrived at about 8 o'clock this morning. Coast Guard helicopters scanning the horizon and cutters scanning the sea have reported no signs of any boats in the Cuban flotilla. So it appears for now the flotilla has stopped. Now, the 8-foot seas may have stopped it, but some officials here believe it is Castro who has stopped the flotilla. One of those officials is Arturo Cobo, who heads the Cuban volunteer force here at the Key West Naval Air Station. Mr. Cobo, do you believe Castro has stopped the flotilla for this time?
Yes, positive, because he sent the boats here with bad weather, and plenty of people die already for this condition. So it's not the weather; it's Castro that is holding the boats.
Why would he want to hold them?
We don't know what he got in mind now. You know, Castro is playing a game in the beginning. He's gonna keep on playing games.
Do you think the boats are going to continue to trickle in, or do you think they'll come in one big group? We've heard reports that they will come in one big group.
Maybe that's our intelligence report is that he's going to send everybody at the same time. So, you know, we're talking about 200 boats all at the same time together. So it's a thing that he can do, but we don't know what is the real situation.
What happens then when he sends the 200 boats? There are no more boats in Mariel to bring back refugees who want to come here. What will you do then, the Cuban-American community?
Well, we're going to be here until the last Cuban come from Cuba, you know. The worry that we have now is that plenty of people went to get the family. Plenty people, we're talking about the 200,000 people that Castro got the list. He knows that these people want to leave the country now. So these people can go to jail for that matter. They lose their jobs, and now we don't have any way to go and get them, you know? So it's going to be a bad situation for our people, the Cubans that live in Cuba. And like I say, well, for example, go to Cuba, get the family, Castro put in the boat, whatever he wants to put, he trying to make a deal, okay, come back again, I'm going to give you 200 people. Okay, but this is not my family. But he say, okay, make another trip and we give you the family. So they bring 200 people, they don't know where they come from. It's not family. This family of the refugee is still in Cuba. And now what are we going to do?
Also, since Wednesday, some of the refugees who have arrived here appear to be more tired, and since they have arrived a month ago. With me is Manuel Campo, who's a doctor who has worked with the refugees. Are the refugees coming in now in worse shape than they were before?
Well, lately they have been coming in a worse shape because the condition of the sea, but they are coming in poor shape too by reason they have lately are beating them more frequently. They are they put the dogs against them. They are wounded by knife, bayonets, and really the conditions of the moral conditions and the physical conditions are very bad, more by the maltreatment they are receiving in Cuba than by the condition of the seas.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank both of you. By far the greatest majority of the refugees, or a great percentage of the refugees who have arrived here since the boat lift began, are young males. And later on this evening, we'll talk with an Army colonel who has a plan to deal with those males. He wants to put them in an Army unit. This is Mike Betcher, Cable News Network, Key West.
In Georgia, convicted killer Jack Potts is scheduled to die Thursday in Georgia's electric chair. He's on death row in the Georgia State Prison, convicted 4 years ago of kidnapping and murdering 24-year-old mechanic. Potts has since turned to religion. He's a Roman Catholic now and says he's ready to die, ready to take his punishment. He told a reporter from TV station WSB in Atlanta he doesn't want people protesting and demonstrating against his execution.
The people that are fighting the death penalty could understand this, that I'm at peace now, and it's the first time in my life I've ever been like this. The people that are, some of the people that profess to be fighting the death penalty, they aren't really, it's inconsistent. Their thoughts, their beliefs are, they're against the death penalty, but they're for abortion. It's inconsistent. It doesn't make sense.
With us in the studio now is the mother of Jack Potts, and to interview her, here is Don Farmer of our staff. Don?
Dave, we've just been told and have just told Mrs. Potts that her son has been moved and transported safely to the Reedsville Penitentiary, where the execution will take place on Thursday if nothing changes. With me are Mrs. Carolyn Potts, the condemned man's mother, and his son, Jack Jr. Mrs. Potts, I know you believe your son is innocent. Thousands of people are planning demonstrations this week around the country against his execution. Why, with all due respect, why are you not out there fighting for his life?
Because we've been fighting for a long time, and it seems like the more we fight, the more we get fought against. Jack has, well, his case has been carried to court. As for being tried, he's never been tried. He was sick, he was out of it. When it first happened, he was full of dope and whiskey. He doesn't remember anything. He's been in constant pain ever since. For long periods of time, he was sick,
But he wants to
in
die
pain.
now. He wants to be executed, is that right?
I can't say he wants to die. I can only say that he doesn't want to live under the conditions that he's living under.
Jack, what is your dad doing in these last few days of his life?
He's trying to prepare for us after he's gone, and talking to me a lot and telling me how to survive, really. And that's about it. You know, he's got a lot of stuff on his mind now.
In just a couple of seconds, Mrs. Potts, why did you invite the victim's mother to the execution?
She seems to have been bitter for so long, and I feel sorry for that woman. I realize I could be in her place. It could be the other way around. And for someone to be that bitter, and I know the woman's hurt, but we, the family, we couldn't help it any more than she could, and she doesn't believe that her son and my son were friends. I can understand that. She never knew it. And it's hard on her, but I just wish, and she keeps having this wish, and she thinks that justice is being done by taking a life. And I just don't think it's up to any individuals to take the life. I don't believe it. I know it won't bring her son back to see another person killed.
Thank you, Mrs. Carolyn Potts and Jack Jr. And the execution date is still scheduled for Thursday here in Georgia. Now back to Dave and Lois.
Okay, Don. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to have our first hour-long sports show. Then in the following hour, Renelda Muse and Lou Waters will be in for another full hour of news.
And at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, President Carter will be interviewed in Washington by our senior correspondent, Daniel Shore, and Washington managing editor, George Watson.
Stay with us. We're going to have all kinds of news, sports, weather, and special features coming from now on and forever. For Dave Walker, I'm Lois Hart. The News Channel now continues.
I'm sure you recognize this lovely melody as Stranger in Paradise. But did you know that the original theme is from the Polovetsin Dance No. 2 by Borodin? So many of the melodies of well-known popular songs were actually written by the great masters, like these familiar themes. And now, all of the best-loved melodies from the classics have been gathered by Vista Marketing into a big 4-record collection. Yes, here are 120 of the greatest works of Strauss, Beethoven, Schubert, and many more, performed by Europe's finest musicians. It's a priceless introduction to the classics that will enrich every home. But there's a great deal more. You also get this special collection of piano masterpieces, 30 of the most beautiful melodies ever composed for the keyboard.
Yes, now you can get 150 of the world's greatest music masterpieces, all for only $11.98. This collection is also available on 8-track cartridges and cassettes for only $14.98.
Yes, here's a unique opportunity to own a complete library of the world's most beautiful music. Here's how to order yours.
To order, call toll-free 1-800-257-1257. In Hawaii, call 536-6677. To avoid COD charges, send check or money order. $11.98 for records, $14.98 for 8-tracks or cassettes. To Classics. Post Office Box 8250, Atlanta, Georgia, 30306.
Under par was enough to win the Kemper Open, and that's just what John Mahaffey did. Among the baseball, the Pirates breezed at home to increase their lead, and in soccer, it went to the absolute limit as the Cosmos won in Washington. Good evening, I'm Nick Charles with Bob Kurtz. This is Sports to the Moment. And Bob, before we hit action in the majors, you've got a big story that happened off the field last night.
Oh, I don't know, Nick. He is known as the straw that stirs the drink. He's the hot dog. They say he's so large, a hot dog, that all the mustard in the world cannot cover him. He, of course, Reggie Jackson, and wherever he goes, controversy and drama seem to follow him. Last night, for instance, Jackson was up in the 11th inning, Yankee Stadium, game tied 6-6, Toronto and New York. Boom, he hits it out, and the Yankees win it 8-6. Then, just 2 hours later, here you see Jackson. This is the game. Reggie up to the plate against the Blue Jays. He wins it in extra innings, 8-6. And the man can come through under pressure. Then, just 2 hours later, Jackson was involved in a different kind of a very dramatic confrontation. He was driving his car down East 83rd Street when it was blocked by a vehicle that was trying to park. Now, Jackson asked the man to move his car. The man did, but then became upset and threw a bottle from a trash can at Jackson's car. Well, Reggie, then joined by 2 bystanders, chased the man down the street until the man suddenly turned. He had a gun. He fired 3 shots. Well, Reggie wasn't hurt. The man was since arrested and identified as Angel Vieira. Jackson said he will press charges. And so today, when the Yankees faced Toronto, Jackson's name was scratched from the lineup by manager Dick Hauser. Ron Guidry had the best line. We learned that Jackson wasn't hurt, however. He said, "I'm not going to sit next to Jackson in a dugout anymore." Well, the Yankees did have plenty of power today, though. Without Jackson, New York powered past the Toronto Blue Jays 11-7 to sweep that 3-game set. Bobby Brown, Craig Nettles homered. Eric Soderholm had a great day for the Yankees. He went 5 for 5. That helped Tom Underwood to his 4th straight win. Let's take a look at the American League scoreboard and see exactly what did happen. There you see that Yankee win. Milwaukee trailed 5-0 in the game against Boston, but battled back to down the Red Sox with Ben Ogilvy having a bases-loaded double to climax a 7-run 8th inning. California and the Tigers and the Twins and the Orioles, there you can see that they're having all kinds of problems. Rain has postponed or delayed those games. Also in the American League, we have Chicago knocking off Kansas City. Brett Burns won his 7th game. He was the winning pitcher there. Seattle, Cleveland, well, they've battled rain all day long, but now they've got it going there in the 8th inning. Seattle is leading Cleveland. Oakland and Texas, the other game, that is later tonight. And speaking about Oakland, the A's, of course, the surprise of the American League. They're just a game and a half right now behind Kansas City. And the one man who is responsible for this ragtag team of unknowns ranking above those player millionaires from Texas and California has to be Billy Martin. Now, Billy Martin is successful wherever he goes to manage because he does one thing better than just about anybody else. And he explained to Cable News Sports in Arlington, Texas.
Players from spring training on learned a lot of things. We do a lot of things other ball clubs don't do. We do things in spring training other clubs don't do. We just work to the point where we got to the point where we can force the opposition to make mental and physical mistakes, and we execute well out there in the bases, and we just do a lot of things.
How do you like returning here to Arlington Stadium?
I like it here in Texas. My home's down here. I live in Arlington, and I like it down here very much.
Do you ever have any second thoughts or regrets or remorse about your leaving here?
Well, I didn't want to leave here in the first place. It wasn't my choice. If Brad Corbett would have took back what he said, I'd still be here. He said I was fired.
The National League today, the Pirates crushed the Mets in Pittsburgh, and a couple of the names on the Pittsburgh club might make you feel we've gone back 20 years. So let's go to Three Rivers Stadium, Pittsburgh, and pick it up. The bottom of the third inning, and Dale Berra, who's now playing for the Pirates, everybody remembers his father, and Yogi Berra. This double sliced to left field. Almost out. Left fielder can't handle it. So Berra on second. Then Vance Law, son of Vernon Law, first at bat in the major leagues, grounds to short, but Frank Tavares kicks it. He had 3 errors, Tavares, in the game. The Mets, or the Pirates go ahead. Mets later tie it. But bottom of the fourth, Steve Nicosia, this single to left, scores Bill Madlock, who had doubled, and the Pirates took the lead, and Berra just nails it shut here, triggering a 7-run 5th inning with this explosion. A grand slam homer. Jim Bibby spaced 8 hits, won his 6th game against 1 loss. So now we go to Dodger Stadium. On the West Coast, Chris Chambliss, this single, scores Hubbard. Now Hubbard, the Glenn Hubbard, just recalled from the minors from Richmond. Hubbard is in playing second base for Jerry Royster. Bob Horner celebrated today. Goodbye. Got every bit of this Dave Goltz pitch. Drove it out. The Braves in a cakewalk. It looked like 4-0 at this point. Now Doyle Alexander on the mound for the Braves, and Steve Garvey, one of the best swings to the toughest part of the park here. It's over and out. Murphy has no shot, and the Dodgers close it, but Horner locks it shut here. Another home run off Charlie Huff this time, slow knuckle this over center field. The Braves go on to win it 9-5. So they start to roll again, and they salvage that last game on the West Coast. Did pretty well, in fact. So Pittsburgh, an easy winner. We checked the scoreboard. They widen their lead in the East because at Wrigley Field this afternoon, the Cubs beat the Phillies 5-4. Scott Thompson's RBI single with the 7th wanted. Phil's Mike Schmidt smacked his 17th homer, but they dropped 2 behind first place Pittsburgh. At St. Louis, Warren Cromartie's 12th inning single pushed Montreal over the Cardinals. Stan Bonson, razor sharp in relief, won it. Now the West Coast, Atlanta beating L.A., as we said, 9-5 at Candlestick. The Giants iced it with 3 in the 8th, and they beat Houston 6-2. Cincinnati, behind a Johnny Bench 3-run homer, they lead the Padres 7-5, playing the 8th inning on the West Coast.
Bob? Fans Law and Dale Berra, huh? Don't we feel old? Coming up, we'll have a thrilling shootout in soccer between Washington and the New York and the Cosmos. Golf, there's lots of heat at Congressional, but didn't stop John Mahaffey, and we'll take a look at just who makes the most money in sports. Stay with us.
Are you sure you shouldn't be seeing your doctor right now? You see, the human body has a built-in alarm system that gives off warning signals when something goes wrong. And not knowing what your body's trying to tell you can really be dangerous. But here's good news. Dr. Isidore Rosenfeld has just written The Complete Medical Exam. It's easy to understand, takes the mystery out of medicine. Dr. Rosenfeld is a world-famous cardiologist, a heart doctor, a clinical professor of medicine at New York Hospital, and an expert on sudden death. And his is the first book ever to tell you what your symptoms mean and if you should see a doctor immediately and why. You'll also find out about your blood pressure, what your cholesterol level really means, the hazards of dieting, the right way a woman should examine her breasts, and what you can do to prevent a heart attack. You'll find out about your prostate, gallbladder, backaches, headaches, and what they mean, and what you can do about them. The latest on arthritis, and what it means if you're always tired. Do you have a sleeping problem? Well, on page 94, you'll learn how to deal with it. You'll even learn the secret of how to discuss costs with your doctor. Now, thousands have paid $11.95 for the Complete Medical Exam book, but for a limited time only, it's yours for just $9.95. And it comes to you on a 30-day money-back guarantee. You know, this book could save the life of a loved one. Here's how to order.
To order your medical aid encyclopedia, phone toll-free 1-800-257-1257. In Hawaii, call 536-6677, or to avoid COD charges, send a check or money order for $9.95 to Medical Book, Post Office Box 8250, Atlanta, Georgia 30306.
In the news headlines to this minute, President Carter visits with civil rights leader Vernon Jordan. Iran places its armed forces on alert along the Iraqi border. Reports that Saudi Arabia will raise its oil prices $4 a barrel. Israeli Prime Minister Begin assumes the defense portfolio himself. And coming up in our next hour, an update on Mount St. Helens. Right now, back to sports.
Okay, we have final just in, 7-6 Cincinnati over San Diego in baseball, a final. And in golf, he's called the baby-faced assassin. We're talking about John Mahaffey. He's the shortest hitter, or one of the shortest hitters on the tour. He also is one of the most accurate. And today, they were playing at Congressional in Washington. And there you see it. What a marvelous course this is. Tight and demanding. And Mahaffey fought off the Supermex, Lee Trevino, Tom Watson, and the rest to take that $72,000 first prize. This is the birdie on 18 that wins it. Previously, he had just birdied 17. That gave him a $275 total, and he picks up that 72 grand. Craig Stadler, watch him leave it on the lip. For the men, tremendous preparation, being able to play Congressional with a tight course, the small greens. They are able to prepare for the United States Open, which comes up in 2 weeks, and they will be ready now after playing Congressional, which incidentally was the site of Ken Venturi's great triumph in 1964. In women's golf, it was young Beth Daniel who was the winner, in fact, winning her second tour event. She shot a 171. She wins by 2 over Nancy Lopez and Joanne Washam. Nancy's Navy was happy as Nancy shook off her slump of recent weeks to shoot a 66 yesterday and battle down the wire today. But it was Beth Daniel again who won the $125,000 tournament.
Bob, soccer today, a tremendous high-energy game at RFK Stadium. The Diplomats and Cosmos went to the limit. RFK Stadium, Washington, D.C., biggest crowd there in the history of the game, over 53,000, and the Diplomats didn't disappoint by carrying the first half after a flagrant foul. Washington's Bobby Rushi gunned this penalty shot past keeper Hubert Birkenmeyer, and that lone goal stood to halftime, but the Cosmos got it together. DiBernardo throws it in from the corner. Carlos Alberto, now watch this instant control, the perfect pass in the box, and number 9 in the dark, Giorgio Canaglia, that instinctual will to win the ball in the air, and a goal. 1-1. Washington thought they had it won with 4 minutes left. The goal was disallowed. Now the shootout after 2 scoreless overtimes. Nobody through 8 shots could score. But finally, Bogicevic pumped it by Bill Irwin on the 9th shot of the shootout. Washington gets their last shot. 90 minutes come down to this. But Cosmos goalkeeper Birkenmeyer wraps Cerucci up, and it's over. Final, Cosmos 2, Diplomats 1. So with the win, the Cosmos strengthen an already unyielding grip on first in the American East. Tonight, a big game for Toronto at home against powerful Dallas. On the West Coast this afternoon, San Jose is trailing California 3-2 with 14 minutes to play. San Diego shut out at Edmonton 1-0, and earlier at the Vet in Philadelphia, the Fury found their offense and beat New England 5-2. Bob?
Well, Nick, in tennis, the quarterfinals are now set in the French Open. That's a $650,000 tournament. Jimmy Connors won today when his opponent, the youngster Yannick Noah, tripped and hurt his leg. Noah tried to continue. Connors, in fact, said the young Frenchman looked like a young colt hobbling around out there. Didn't help. Connors went on to win. They finally had to stop it. It was 7-5, 6-4 when the French star finally did quit. Noah had reached the finals of the Italian Open last week, and his countrymen had hoped that he would become the first native Frenchman to win the French Open in some 34 years. Also advancing to the quarterfinals today were Vias, who was the #1 seed, and he crushed Buster Nottram of Great Britain. Harold Solomon also won, as did Brian Godfrey. Now, Brian Godfrey has played in every French Open for the past 10 years. Chris Everett Lloyd led the women into the quarterfinals. There you see the men with Vias, Solomon, and Godfrey all winning. Okay, with the women, it was Chris Everett Lloyd who led the ladies into the quarterfinals. A hard-fought win over Bettina Bunge. She'll face Kathy Jordan. It took less than an hour to advance. Now, the other quarterfinal pairing in the top of the draw will have Ivana Madruga, who goes up against Virginia Wade. She upset Virginia Wade. She'll go against Hanna Manlikova of Czechoslovakia.
Tomorrow morning, the Maryland Racing Commission holds a hearing to consider the Preakness question. Namely, did the winner Kodaks bump the runner-up, Philly Genuine Risk, enough to eliminate her chance of winning? This corner says no question it was interference. Whether it cost genuine risk the win does not matter. Angel Cordero, Road Codex, Jacinto Vasquez was aboard genuine risk. Now, Vasquez immediately lodged an objection that the Maryland stewards didn't beat him to the punch and flash the inquiry sign to me as inexcusable. In fact, it's outrageous. The bump happened at the key point in the race when they were straightening for home and when both the Colt and filly were switching leads. This is where a horse fires when you ask for that final winning burst. Genuine Risk had her momentum destroyed. There's no question. If she was the chalk favorite going into the Preakness, she is at best, though, a long shot in this hearing. We'll see tomorrow afternoon if justice will overrule tradition. In the meantime, it sets up a tantalizing, absolutely tantalizing race in the Belmont Saturday, doesn't it?
Question of justice over tradition?
I say so.
Okay. Two big auto races today. Alan Jones of Australia won the Spanish Grand Prix. In fact, only 5 cars were able to finish. The temperature was up near 100 degrees. Jones is now tops in the world standing. The NASCAR 400 was in College Station. Texan Cale Yarborough was the man at the pole. Well, he held on all the way and won it, despite the fact that he ran out of gas. However, he was able to limp in and still come up winning. Nick?
Well, how fast can a person run or how high can they jump? Well, for the second time in 2 weeks, somebody shattered the world pole vault record. Today in a meet just outside Paris, young Frenchman Thierry Vigneron cleared 18 feet 10 3/8 inches. He's good, but this is no surprise. Vigneron set the world junior mark just last year. Today he broke the mark set May 11th by Poland's Ladislav Kozakowicz, doing it despite a driving wind and steady rain. Bob?
Well, we are told that most of us work into May, paying off our income taxes, our state and our local taxes and Social Security before we finally start working for ourselves. Well, how do athletes do it? At the end of May, they do considerably better than the rest of us do. This is in the professional golf ranks. Watson and Young are the leaders there. However, they have not done nearly as well as the tennis leaders. Borg and Martina Navratilova. Navratilova, interestingly enough, has won more money than any of the men tennis players. But those figures pale in comparison with jockey Chris McCarron, who pockets 10% of the $2 million worth of winnings that his horses have won. And Spectacular Bid, well, Spectacular Bid only gets good grooming and a little bit extra grain for winning some $500,000.
Makes us all feel great, doesn't it? Keep working, Bob. NASL update. California beats San Jose a final 3-2. When we come back, the commissioner of the National Football League, Pete Rozelle, will join us live in our studios, so stay with us.
Oil shortages, energy crisis, inflation, high cost of living, unemployment. If today's headlines scare you as much as they do me, maybe it's time you started giving serious consideration to our future. I'm Warren Johnson, author of Muddling Toward Frugality, a guide for survival in the years ahead. Some people don't believe that there is an energy crunch, but most of us already realize that it does exist and is affecting us all. The question is, what can we do to continue to live as comfortably as possible in times of scarcity? My book attempts to answer this question by taking a revealing look at our past and exploring many of the reasons for our present crisis. But more importantly, it takes a look at the options for our future and outlines a guide for simple yet comfortable living. Almost all of our economic problems stem from the high cost and scarcity of our non-renewable energy resources, the cheap energy we use to run our industries, transport our food, and mass produce the many products we use every day. Sooner or later, we must face the fact that our incomes will not be able to keep up with the rising cost of energy, and our energy sources will no longer be able to support industry the same way they do today. But our future does not have to be bleak. In Muddling Toward Frugality, I point out that we are being given a great chance to move back to a simpler, more rewarding way of life. For example, as rising energy costs and shortages make large businesses that rely on cheap energy more and more unfeasible, new opportunities for small-scale economic activities will develop. And it will be those people who can take advantage of these opportunities and build a safe, comfortable, and frugal way of life with close ties to family and friends that will be doing the right thing. I urge you all to start planning now for the future by reading Muddling Toward Frugality, a guide for living as comfortably as possible in the changing times ahead.
To receive your copy of Muddling Toward Frugality, send $2.95 plus $1 shipping and handling to Muddling, P.O. Box 8250, Atlanta, Georgia 30306. Or use your Master Charge or Visa cards by calling 1-800-257-1257.
Here's the news making headlines at this moment. The Democratic race in the California primary is said to be too close to call. President Carter warns Iran today that no form of U.S. retaliation has been ruled out if the hostages are put on trial. Doctors at a Fort Wayne hospital say they expect civil rights leader Vernon Jordan to recover fully. And coming up in the next hour, a report on that riot in Zurich. Now back to sports.
Our guest joining us for our inaugural day, a name that's known to everyone in sports, Pete Rozelle, the commissioner of the National Football League. Interestingly enough, it is now 20 years since you've been appointed commissioner, and in 20 years ago there was no Super Bowl, there was no AFC conference, there was just the AFL getting started, and Pittsburgh was the weakest team in the National Football League. What else have you seen in 20 years?
Oh, I think probably the big thing would be through expansion and merger, going from the 12 teams that were there when I took the job in 1960 to 28 now through expansion and merger. And then, you know, being on all 3 television networks, of course, is quite a change. But mainly it's just the size of it now as against what it was then.
Pete, can I ask you, Jack Tatum's book, have you read it?
I've read excerpts from it. I haven't read the entire book.
What do you think, just basically? A lot of people are concluding that to some degree the NFL encourages this type of thing. Talk to players, nobody seems to mind. I don't know if they're protecting Jack or what.
I think the problem is that there's a fine line in a physical contact sport, but it has to be a disciplined form of physical contact within the rules. And you've got coaches who want to win, and they want their players to be aggressive. And I think sometimes that line is crossed, and when it's crossed, we have to take action. But insofar as the philosophy expressed in Jack's book, I totally disagree with it, and I'm sure that everyone in the NFL does.
I talked to Ed Garvey the other day, and he says they are in favor. Ed Garvey, of course, the executive director of the Players Association, they're in favor of instant replay. They support it. They say the ref should have a view. This is Ed now quoting him, a view equal to that, at least to the fan at home. And he says they could accomplish it by using what the networks have. You stick the extra referee in the booth, and he makes a decision. Each team's allowed 2 timeouts for instant replay.
I wish it would be that clear. But for anyone who saw the Preakness the other day, I give you that as an example. Right. I think people saw that shot, and some said, well, genuine risk should have been declared the winner, and others would have said, well, it wasn't sufficient. You would need so many cameras. I think perhaps someday that we'll have it, but you would have to have it so it'd be absolutely conclusive. The clubs don't like it right now because they think it would be unfair where a shot is clear, it shows the play, and the official is overruled. Then the other team is involved in a similar play, say a few minutes later, and rather than covering the wide receiver, they got an isolated on the linebacker, they show the running back, the play isn't seen, so they don't overrule the official. So they feel that inconsistency of change would be unfair to them.
Oakland was involved in a number of controversial plays. Why does it seem like most of your headaches come from Oakland? Tatum, and of course Al Davis now, you know, screaming that he is being held hostage in Oakland. How do you answer that when he says that you know, the Rams get to move, everybody gets to move, and Al Davis doesn't get to move?
Well, the Ram move was, of course, to the suburbs of Los Angeles, about 35 miles. You had Detroit moving to Pontiac. You had the Buffalo team moving to Orchard Park, the Dallas Cowboys to Irving, Texas. The Giants across the river to Jersey. And however, in the case of the Oakland wanting to move to Los Angeles, it calls for a league vote. And the Raiders declared that they were going to move without a vote. And that's what's prompted this litigation. Of course, it's a matter of great concern for me in my job, because if we're going to have owners come into the league, accept the Constitution, but then say, I'm going to be somewhat selective in my observance of the rules. If I'm outvoted 21 to 7, most of our votes call for 3/4 of approval. If I don't get enough votes in this area, I'm going to do what I want. If you have that, you have anarchy, and that's what concerns me.
Can you project the winner here? I understand that. I think we're all assuming Oakland's going to stay in Oakland, the Raiders, this year, and then do you have any clue what's going to happen?
Well,
would you project?
It's hard to predict the courts, but at this point, it would seem unlikely they'd be able to get enough sufficient clearance from the courts to move this year. So right now, the likelihood is they'll play in Oakland, and then the rest will depend upon what the courts tell us.
Is there something behind all this? I mean, is Al Davis a maverick because of the old AFL days? Is there something a little bit behind that?
In this case, I think he just wants to move to Los Angeles because financially he feels with what the offer made by the city of Los Angeles, it'll be much more attractive for him.
Pete, how do you feel about shared revenue? And some people, and Ed Garvey is one, once again, I hate to bring out the devil's advocate, but he is the other side, says that it kills incentive with a 60-40 split at the gate, $5 million to every club. Regardless of one-loss record, they're going to make that $5 million, which is 2/3 of their income. There's no incentive to really build a winner.
Well, I think you have to be around a football team to understand there's plenty of incentive, and I know that the disciplinary action I have to take, including taking draft choices away from teams because they try and violate the player limit by sneaking players in, maybe and working them out during the season, and other things like that. You can tell it's highly competitive. They want to get to that Super Bowl, and anyone close enough to a football team will tell you that. We do share revenue. I don't feel we're economic competitors to any great extent. We share the television equally. Well, by sharing the television equally, then you have a San Diego, a Green Bay, getting as much money from television as New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, or Philadelphia. So they have the means to compete. They have the means to hire good scouts. They have the means to hire good coaches. And then when we have competitive balance, where we have uncertainty, where over 40% of our games are decided by 7 points or less, we have close divisional races, that attracts television. And that's one of the reasons we're getting the money that we have.
Does it scare you, though? Is the NFL overexposed, or starting to be overexposed?
We're very careful about that. I don't think we are now. To give you an example of how concerned we are, we've put our money where our mouth is the last 3 years. Our deal with ABC for Monday Night Football is that we'll have between 4 and 6 specials, either on a Sunday or a Thursday night, in addition to the Monday night games. And whether it's 4, 5, or 6 is up to us. It's $3 million a game. We've held it at 4 in 78, 79, and this year. And now that means we left $18 million on the table just because we were concerned about overexposure.
Are you surprised, very briefly, about the lack of free agent movement from club to club?
Not particularly, because when the formula was set, it was set at a certain level. And I think Ed Garvey achieved one of the things that he wanted, to give the players, the average player, the leverage to make more money. Now, the problem there was that when he got the leverage to make more money, it put him into a higher compensation category.
We have lots of questions we'd like to ask you, and we're running a little bit out of time. We'd like to thank you very much for being with us. And you see the future. Now, you're meeting here in Atlanta for a week, and the NFL meeting and so forth. You see the future is bright?
I see it as very bright at this point.
We can't live without the NFL, can we?
Oh, we sure can't. It's replaced a lot of things as a pastime for a while. When we return, thank you, Pete Rozelle. Fred Hickman and Dan Carney review what was probably an unequaled month in sports, so stay with us.
I feel like I couldn't be any more comfortable than I am right now.
We're eavesdropping with hidden cameras as a big car owner test drives the new Dodge Diplomat.
It's got a great ride. You know, it's not noisy. We're talking good gas mileage. You're definitely talking about a winner.
So if you're moving down for better mileage but want to keep that big car feeling, see the new Dodge Diplomat.
It's got all the comfort I need, and I'm a big guy.
Come to the Dodge Celebration Sale. Get a $300 rebate on specially tagged Diplomats.
Did you know that there are at least 23 million American adults who can't read a want ad?
Or a book, or a job application. That's why we have RIF.
RIF is Reading is Fundamental. It's a national nonprofit program that makes kids really want to read. Give a kid a book and you'll give a kid a break. Join the RIF program in your community.
Or write RIF, Box 23444, Washington, D.C.
Hey, you're pretty smart. How'd you get so smart?
Reading.
Thanks to you, it works for all of us, the United Way. I'm Leslie Nielsen, and I wish I could really thank you for the help you've given people through United Way. I wish I could thank you for the family whose child the doctors said will be able to walk, for the single mother who can take her little girl to a daycare center so that she can work, for the old woman who sees a friendly face and has a hot meal, for the kids who have been abused or abandoned, But all of these people and many more can thank you a lot better than I can, and they'd like to. They're inviting you to visit a United Way agency so that they can thank you personally. Thanks to you, it works for all of us. The United Way.
Here's the news headlines to the moment. 80 Iraqi soldiers are killed or wounded in fighting along the Iran border. 1,800 Marines are leaving the Arabian Sea. Mount St. Helens has its first quiet Sunday in 3 weeks. Investigators say they are puzzled about the shooting of civil rights leader Vernon Jordan. And coming up in the next hour, more on the Amtrak train shooting. Right now, back with sports.
Welcome back to Sports Sunday. I'm Dan Carney along with Fred Hickman. As Nick and Bob were telling you, the month of May packed with sports. Fred, as you know, we had the National Basketball Association playoffs and the National Hockey League playoffs.
Well, that's just the beginning. We almost saw baseball, Major League Baseball, come to a screeching halt with a strike that was averted in the 11th hour. We see golf's Tom Watson. He's found himself a place among the superstars of the game. Johnny Rutherford took his third Indy 500.
Busy month. For instance, in the horse racing world this year, there was no one clear-cut Triple Crown favorite. Among the 3-year-olds, there wasn't a spectacular bid, Affirm, Secretariat, or Seattle Slew in the bunch. So this year's Triple Crown was up for grabs. Every horse and the one filly had a legitimate shot at winning the first jewel, the Kentucky Derby. And not many thought that the lady could even stay with the boys. But Genuine Risk did stay with the boys, and more. She left them in the dust. Her trainer, Leroy Jolly, didn't think she had a chance. But one time, Genuine Risk challenged the field of colts was in the Wood Memorial just prior to the Derby. And she lost to Plug Nickel and Colonel Moran. 2 in this Derby field, but other than the one loss, she was undefeated. Watch her as she rounds the field. 2 favorites, Plug Nickel and Rock Hill Native, saw no pacing in this classy and went for all the marbles early. Genuine Risk waited till they burned each other out and went on to prove to the nation and her trainer that she was, in fact, genuine. The Risk wins the 105th running of the Kentucky Derby and was the first time the fillies since Regret in 1915. But could Genuine Risk take the second jewel at Pimlico, the Preakness Stakes? Like in the Derby, she begins to round the field in the far turn with Jacinto Vasquez in the irons. The Risk meets number 3 Codex with Angel Cordero aboard. But right here, watch it. Codex bore out and hit Genuine Risk, a hit that would later result in an inquiry. Never before in the history of this race had a number been taken down and a new official winner announced. And the stewards kept with the tradition. At this point, it's all Codex. He came down the stretch like he came down the stretch in the Santa Anita Derby and the Hollywood Derby, out in front. And Genuine Risk in the middle of the track could never catch him. The same problem Rumbo had in the Hollywood and Santa Anita Derbies. Codex with Angel Cordero aboard withstood the foul claim and the challenge of Genuine Risk and wins the Preakness Stakes. So this sets up the Belmont Stakes, horse racing's third jewel of the Triple Crown. It's coming up this Saturday. We'll have the winner of the Kentucky Derby, Genuine Risk, the winner of the Preakness, Codex, and the horse that will challenge both, Rumbo. Rumbo was closing in on Codex in the Hollywood and Santa Anita Derbies. He didn't run in the Preakness, but he was closing in fast on Genuine Risk in the Kentucky Derby, so it should be quite a race. I know who you are going with, Fred.
I like Rumbo.
Okay.
I like Rumbo in the Derby, Dan. Another kind of racing now. Over 250,000 shirt-sleeved auto racing fans invaded the Indianapolis Brickyard over the Memorial Day weekend. They came to witness the 64th running of the Indianapolis 500. It was a unique race in that 10 of the drivers out of the 33-car field had absolutely no championship experience before entering. But it was this man, the veteran from Texas, Johnny Rutherford, who drew the pole and went on to win the race. It was his third win at the Indy 500. His winning speed of 142.8 miles per hour was the slowest turned in since 1962, but the purse was the biggest ever. Rutherford banked $318,000, and even Larry Cannon, who finished last place in the race, went away smiling with a $25,000 check. The game of professional golf, as I said at the top, has a new superstar as we begin the 80s. His name is Tom Watson. He's a sure bet to beat all of the all-time single winnings record with a cool $340,000 in prize money already banked. Watson began the month of May by winning the Byron Nelson Classic. He moved on to the Memorial, where he finished second, and he was also second to the Colonial Tourney. He finished 1 over par today out of the big money in the Kemper Open just completed. But it looks like Watson will finish the season as the PGA's leading money winner for the 4th consecutive year. He can also be named the Tour's Player of the Year for the 4th straight time. But even if those titles elude him, Watson is no doubt the golf game's most dominant player since Jack Nicklaus back in the early 70s.
I worked very hard at the game. I never gave up on myself. I had a very understanding wife, and a very good caddy behind me, and it all gelled, it seemed, in 1977 when I won 4 tournaments there, and then I've won 5 tournaments the last 3 years.
Right now, Dan Watson is gearing up for for the week after next one. We'll have the U.S. Open coming up. That is the only major title he hasn't won yet, and I think he'll have a good chance at it.
All right, Fred. In the month of May, the National Hockey League Stanley Cup playoffs provided new life to the game itself. For the first time in quite a while, we had an All-American final series. The Philadelphia Flyers, the team with the best record in all the NHL this season, was the clear-cut favorite over the New York Islanders. But the Islanders were the hottest thing going the last 2 weeks of the season, and they kept their momentum going into the playoffs. They beat the L.A. Kings, the Boston Bruins, and the Buffalo Sabres to reach the finals. And in Game 1 of the championship series, the Islanders go into the Philadelphia Spectrum and beat the Flyers on their own ice. There's a surprise. With the score tied at 3 apiece on the power play, the Islanders with a puck. Mauro Tenistrom. The puck makes its way over to John Tonelli behind the goal. He gets it to Dennis Potvin, and it's in for the score. The Islanders win it in extra time 4-3 and take a psychological advantage as well as a 1-0 game lead. Then on May 24th, in Game 6 with a score of 4-3, Islanders, McLeish with a puck up to Moose Dupont. He shoots, and it's deflected by John Paddock in the net for the tie score, now in overtime. John Tonelli coming up the ice. He feeds over to Bob Nystrom, shoots and scores, and the Islanders win the series and the Stanley Cup 4-2, and they're going wild in Uniondale, New York. Not since 1940, when the Rangers beat the Toronto Maple Leafs, has this Big Apple owned the Stanley Cup. And for the first time in their 8-year existence, the New York Islanders make it into the finals and win the whole ball of wax. So, the Stanley Cup belongs to the Islanders, but remember, the Flyers had one of the hottest first-half seasons ever, establishing a new record, going 35 games, consecutive games, without a loss.
And professional basketball fans could ask for no more exciting championship series than the one they got in the month of May. The Philadelphia 76ers and the Los Angeles Lakers finally appeased their frustrated followers by going all the way to the championship series. The 6-game classic featured the 2 most dominant players in the game today, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the Los Angeles Lakers and Dr. Julius Erving for the Philadelphia 76ers. Abdul-Jabbar set the tempo for the Lakers early. His patented skyhooks were almost always out of the reach of Philadelphia defenders. And the Dr. J, well, he was his usual awesome self offensively. The Lakers had the momentum going into Game 5, but L.A. fans were hushed in the 3rd period when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar pulled up lame on that play. He was taken out of the ball game, but the Lakers did not lay down. Irvin Magic Johnson, Michael Cooper both went to work. This play ended the 3rd period. And then one of the most dramatic moments of the season, Abdul-Jabbar returned. His left ankle badly sprained, and the big fellow was obviously playing with a lot of pain. But despite the injury, Abdul-Jabbar played a great defense and came up with this 3-point play to win the ball game, 33 seconds left. May 16th now, Friday, the 6th and final game belonged to the Magic Man, Irvin Johnson. He had a brilliant rookie campaign for the Lakers, bringing a youthful energy to a veteran club. He culminated the season with a 42-point performance in that final game, bringing Los Angeles their first NBA championship in 9 years. It was a champagne cocktail for Paul Westhead and a bitter loss for Billy Cunningham's 76ers. And May was also the month in which the newest team in the NBA became a reality. The Dallas Mavericks, owned by Norm Sanju, will take the court next season as the league's 23rd franchise.
And Fred, we were all wondering throughout the month of May whether we'd be having baseball in the summer months. The Major League Players Association and the league owners could not come to terms on a new contract. The deadline for reaching the agreement was midnight, May 22nd, and all America went to sleep that night, figuring the strike was assured. But Marvin Miller for the Players Association and Ray Grebe, president of the Players Relations Committee, worked all through the night and reached a new agreement. And there wasn't anyone or anything who wasn't ecstatic that the strike was averted. Every fan and anyone connected with the baseball was happy the announcement was made that day.
From the point of view of the 26 clubs, we think it's a good agreement. It has something in it for everybody. We look forward to working together, and we look forward to the game growing with us together. Marvin?
I would endorse what Ray just said. I think that whenever you reach a good agreement, and I hope that it will be portrayed this way, that both parties have achieved a victory.
You know, it would have been something not to have the national pastime around for the summer months. It would take some kind of alternative to match the action we've witnessed so far this baseball season. Let's take a look at some of them. It's going to be a great season. That's Sports Sunday for this week.
And we'll be back throughout the evening with more sports for you. Nick and Bob will be along in 3 hours with a full half-hour roundup, and we will talk to you a little bit later.
Now, Time Life Books brings you the Good Cook series. It's a fabulous collection of recipes, plus all the step-by-step how-to-do-it skills to make them. In poultry, you'll learn boning and braising, how to cut for economy and carve with confidence. Cut corners on time and trouble and cost, but never on quality. Always starting from scratch with the freshest natural ingredients and finishing up beautifully. In soups, you'll study stocks and stews and everything from slow simmering to deep freezing. Vegetables will teach you seasonal shopping, herbs and marinades, and quick steaming and stuffing, and stir-frying. When you complete the Good Cook series, you'll know rice and spice, poaching and pickling, what golden brown looks like, how to do every kind of cooking easier, faster, and better. And to show off your new skills, we've gathered thousands of recipes from the best cookbooks from Manhattan to Morocco. So you can make chicken Kiev like a Russian, authentic Wiener Schnitzel, and a cherry pie George would love. Make more interesting salads, lighter cakes, and heartier breads, simple suppers, and fabulous feasts. We'll send you poultry for a free 10-day examination, along with this marvelous 48-page guide to kitchen tools and equipment, yours to keep if you decide to purchase poultry. If you and your family aren't thrilled with poultry, you can return these books within 10 days and owe nothing. If you keep poultry, you'll pay just $9.95 plus shipping and handling. Then, approximately every other month, you'll receive a new volume of the Good Cook series for the same 10-day free examination. There's no minimum number to buy, and you may cancel at any time. Each is only $9.95 plus shipping and handling, and they'll make you a good cook for life.
To order your subscription to the Good Cook series, call toll-free 1-800-257-1257. In New Jersey, call 800-232-6966. Each book for $9.95 will be sent on a 10-day approval every other month.
As you already know, this is the first day for the Cable News Network, and we thought you might like to see where we live and some of our facilities. So here's a tour of CNN with Chris Curl and Dawn Farmer.
Isolate satellite control.
It's a pleasure to take you on a tour of the facilities here at the Cable News Network to see the machines and the people who will make this news channel work. I'm staying in what we call the farm, the satellite farm, the largest collection of satellite receiving dishes in the world. Each of these 6 receivers is aimed at one of the 6 U.S. domestic satellites in orbit 22,300 miles above the Earth. Well, these monsters, it seems, can collect almost anything from up there, any broadcast signal being carried on any channel on any of the satellites. They reach up and they get the signal somehow and they bring it right down here. And from here, it's only a short trip by cable across this Georgia red clay lot inside the Cable News Network headquarters here in Atlanta. My wife and co-anchor Chris Curl is inside there now at Master Control. Chris?
It's here in Master Control that the signals from all of those dishes become pictures and sounds. It's here that they're all transformed into the people and into the programs that you'll see here on the news channel. And one of the busiest people here is our satellite manager, Bill Papa. Bill.
Hi, we're very busy here because we have access to any signal transmitted via a domestic satellite, which is as many as 98 at any given time. We have 20 receivers here, so we can tune into as many as 20 signals simultaneously that we'll have access to anywhere in the house here at CNN.
What happens to the signals after you've rounded them up here in Master Control?
Okay, we tune in the frequency here, and it's put into our routing system right here, and then it can be viewed on any one of our monitors on the monitor bank here, as well as several monitors throughout the studio floor, as well as all the editing rooms and some other locations throughout the building.
You can just push a button and it either goes to the viewer or to one of our edit rooms or someplace else.
Exactly. Right now, we're taking a feed from New York. As you can see right here, Mary Alice isn't quite ready, and tile here, and this is what's currently going out on CNN Air.
Well, whether our viewers will see it as it's happening or whether our viewers will see it in an edited form later on is determined here at CNN, where Don is right now.
This is where the news people tackle all that technology we've been showing you and actually use it to help us gather the news. And one of our chief news gatherers at CNN is Jim Rutledge. Jim, what's the function of the desk?
Well, this is where we have 15 assignment editors, and it's here that we coordinate all the activity that we collect with the 7 domestic bureaus and the 2 foreign bureaus. We work throughout the day, 24 hours a day, to get the material that you see on the air.
So if any of our people have a problem, they call you first?
That's correct.
We're going to come back to the assignment desk in just a moment to show you our bureaus in this country and around the world. From here, the material goes literally right across the room, right here, to where the producers and the writers take the pictures and the words and try to put together the actual pieces you see on the air on Cable News Network. The man in charge here is Ted Kavanaugh. Ted, I'm sorry, excuse me. How do you put it together here?
So we have a pool of producers here. Each one does 2-hour shows, 1-hour show, then 4 hours off another hour show. They take the material from the pool and they send it over to the videotape room where it's coordinated with the words and the tape is coordinated, and then it's on to the anchor people, and we wish them luck with it.
Okay, thanks very much. From here, across the anchor desk, through the sports area, to A Control, as we call it, and that's where Chris is standing by now. Chris?
Well, you've seen Master Control. This is A Control, where all of our news gathering efforts come together electronically. Our directors and our producers sit here to make our newscasts, our tape reports, and all of our live satellite feeds come together to be part of our continuous news coverage. And the technology here is the latest and the very best. This audio board, for example, is really one of a kind. We could use it for a rock concert, but we just use it to make sure that you can hear the news as it happens.
Primary, volcano, concert, riot, religion, hostage,
interest rates may be going surge in high
London, Rome, Los Angeles, Vienna, Miami, Buffalo, Seoul, Tokyo, Moscow.
So as you've seen now, it all comes together here in Atlanta, but it all comes into Atlanta from a lot of different places, especially from the CNN bureaus around the United States, the largest of which is in Washington.
This is Bernard Shaw in our Cable News Washington Bureau. Our staff is large because this news capital of the world is large, complex, and ever-changing. The number one challenge is not just to tell you what and why things happen here, but to explain what developments mean to you and how they'll affect your pocketbook. And we've got the kind of professionals who care.
I'm Mark Walton. As White House correspondent for Cable News, I'll be covering the president and his advisors as they have never been covered before, with precise live television reports wherever and whenever presidential news happens. In the Oval Office, overseas, and on the campaign trail, you can rely on me and our Cable News cameras for in-depth, plain language reporting on the nation's #1 citizen.
I'm Kirsten Lindquist at the Treasury Department. I've got the economics beat.
This is Bob Berkowitz on Capitol Hill. We're going to keep a sharp eye on Congress with updates throughout the day. And if it's important, we'll be there live.
You can depend on us being here all the time. And please, pass the word.
I'm Mary Alice Williams, New York Bureau Chief for the Cable News Network. We're in the heart of Wall Street, and each morning, each night, anchor Lou Dobbs, editor Myron Kandel, and our financial team will be bringing you reports on the world of business and high finance and what it means to you. Kevin Sanders will let you in on the in crowd, TV, Broadway, the beautiful people. Elsa Clanch brings in the trendsetters, the go-getters who set today's style. Ed Randall runs down the hits, the runs, and the errors, and along with a top-notch staff of reporters, I'll be bringing you the news as it happens, live from New York and the Northeast.
This is Jeff Levine in San Francisco. I'll be covering news of the Bay Area and the Pacific Northwest. Whenever and wherever news happens in our area, we'll be there. And we'll bring it to you live via satellite. From breaking stories to politics to features, we'll have it all. So please, stay with us.
Hello, I'm Larry Lamont, the Dallas Bureau Chief for the CNN. Welcome to our bureau in downtown Dallas at one main place. Though we're in downtown, we're going to be covering a 4-state region: Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, and Louisiana. It's an exciting region, well known for its tornadoes and hurricanes and oil slicks. But it's also known for something else, an economic boom. This is the Sun Belt area. Many businesses are moving to Houston and to Dallas, New Orleans, and other cities in the Sun Belt states. It's an exciting story, and we'll keep you abreast of it.
Welcome to California. Hi, I'm Lee Leonard, and this is the CNN Los Angeles Bureau.
Every night at 10 o'clock Pacific time, we'll bring you Tonight's People, a full hour of talk with celebrities and people making the news. But a lot more will come to you from Los Angeles. We will have a full-time entertainment reporter covering the entertainment capital of the world, Fred Saxon, and he'll be feeding information via satellite to you all day and all night on CNN. Hard news will be covered by Bryce Zabel, and the sports beat here in the Los Angeles area by Debbie Segura. That's all coming to you from Los Angeles here on CNN. We'll be with you every night at 10 o'clock for a full hour of talk with Tonight's People.
This is Cindy Druss, Bureau Chief in Chicago. I'm one of nearly 7 million people that say Chicago is my kind of town. Here you find the kind of people that build the world's tallest building, serve the world's best pizza, elect feisty mayors, and turn out for any kind of parade anytime. Here in Chicago, we cover the people, those in colorful old country neighborhoods and those in the corporate neighborhoods. We cover people known for their leadership, people known for their advice, and people you know for plain common sense. Transmitting live by satellite and microwave, here and around the Midwest, CNN is in the heartland's capital city because this is our kind of town.
All of our foreign news reports comes across this desk, comes from our correspondents and bureaus around the country, to our foreign editor, who is Janae Von Essen. Janae, how does the material get here from around the world?
One of the things we're really excited about is our ability to use satellite coverage to feed from our Rome and our London bureaus and to feed from various points where stories are breaking in the world and bring the material right here into Atlanta, where we'll put it on the air as fast as we can. I think we're going to get a lot more international news on the air. I think we're going to get it on a lot faster. You're going to get the opportunity to see a lot more of the way things take place in the world on CNN. Another thing I think will be a lot of fun for the people of the country is to see some of the foreign sports that you don't usually see covered here by the American networks, like cricket, some of the yacht races. I think they're fascinating, and we should have them on a lot.
Thank you, Janae. And sports is our next stop on this tour of the Cable News headquarters. Any serious news coverage, whether it's local, national, or international, has to include sports. And our vice president in charge of sports coverage here at Cable News is Bill McPhail. Bill, what sort of coverage can we look forward to?
Well, Don, we're going to have full sports around the clock. We'll have, among other programs, 2 half-hours on weekdays. We'll have 2-hour programs on the weekends. We plan extensive coverage of sports, national and international.
More than just the scores?
A lot more than the scores, Don.
Thank you, Bill. Sports, of course, does make big news, and so does sometimes the weather. Chris?
Absolutely, Don. Here in our CNN meteorology department, weatherman Flip Spiceland has all of the latest equipment to make sure that you get the latest weather story. Flip, what is all this new technology?
Well, this is the latest thing in weather reporting is the computer, as you've seen, I'm sure, around the newsroom already. This is our weather scan computer, and we tap in the National Weather Service lines, and we pick up every single solitary piece of information that the National Weather Service has and that they are distributing throughout the United States.
You don't have to go rip the wires anymore. You just punch the buttons, right?
We don't rip wires at all. Now, if we were recording a long list of temperatures, something obviously would be difficult for us to remember them. So for the old backup, we can put this thing in a mode like this and print things out of the top of it and go ahead and rip wires if we want to. The memory starts to fail a little bit, but no, we don't fool around with paper at all over here in the weather department. We have all the electronic gizmos. Matter of fact, I was just looking for bulletins anywhere in the country. I just type in, give me the bulletin file, and any place in the country that has a weather bulletin out right now prints right out on my screen right here.
And you learn about it instantaneously through the machine.
Absolutely. The moment that it hits the wire, it can be displayed right here.
There's something behind me that you were telling me is very new and unique to us, right?
It is new. As a matter of fact, this is one of the only ones in the country that will operate this way. Now, most people have seen color radar, but it's for your local area, wherever you live. That's the color radar you see. This color radar can patch into 30 of the 33 available radar systems in the country. In other words, even though we are here in the southeast, we could see the radar scan in New York City. We could see the radar scan in Seattle, Washington. We can see radar anywhere in the country by punching it up right here. We can see there are 33 available National Weather Service radars. We can pick up 30 of them right here on this little screen.
So, Flip, you could trace a weather system all across the country with this.
Absolutely. If we saw a front that was kicking up its heels in Denver and then moving on into Kansas, we could punch up Denver. When it moved into Kansas, we could punch up Kansas. Got into Missouri, we could punch it up in Missouri and follow that front on radar all the way across the country. That's true. In addition to that, we'll also have a GOES satellite receiver. But again, we're not taking a local feed. We're patching out of Washington, D.C. So we can get 24 different pictures from the satellite at any time we want. Just dial them up. They'll have a new one for us every 30 minutes. We can see the West Coast just like we can see the East Coast, 24 different angles from the satellite. And then we have our good old-fashioned NAFAX machine that just...
Old-fashioned equipment?
Yeah, it is old-fashioned. It's paper, we're sorry to say. We have paper, just print out good old-fashioned weather charts that the meteorologists like to browse at and mark on and draw their isobars and temperatures.
So you've got the weather story covered for CNN, right?
We've got it covered completely. And in addition to this electronic equipment, if you talk about old-fashioned, we got the good old-fashioned weather map over there, too. And we'll be doing a lot of fancy things with that, too.
Thank you very much, Flip Spiceland. And now, let's go back to Dawn.
We try to do more than just cover the news here on CNN. We also like to get behind the stories and bring you some interesting discussions about issues that are very important to a lot of people. Our premier effort in doing that is called Freeman Reports, and the host of that program every night is Sandy Freeman. Sandy, what is it you do here every night?
It'd be difficult for you to know because I'm sure you're sound asleep by that time. But every evening we will have a 1-hour show, Monday through Friday live. We'll have a live audience here. We will have phone-in capabilities from across the country so that people will be able to phone in and talk to the guest or guests who are here with us. We'll be covering newsmakers. We'll be covering news stories of the day, and hopefully have the time to get behind the headlines so that maybe we can all put the pieces together and see how they affect us where we live.
Doesn't that make it, Sandy, the first nationwide call-in television issue-oriented program?
Yes, it does. It does, and that's exciting.
It really is, yeah. And while Sandy's asleep, if she's lucky, Chris and I will be looking at some of the same stories and some others, too, from a slightly different perspective, and in fact, a slightly different location, just the other side of this revolving newsroom. Chris?
It's true there are many ways you can watch the news channel. You can never sleep and be with us 24 hours a day, or you can tune in at any time of the day or night to find out then what's happening in your world.
And while we have your attention, we cannot resist suggesting one good place to check us out. At noon Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, Chris and I will be right here on a 2-hour program called Take Two. News for sure, and sports and weather too, plus a lot of other material we think you'll want to know about. Take Two starts tomorrow. We're really happy to be here at the start of something very special in television journalism.
And we're happy that you're here with us to watch the news channel as the news goes on.
Here's the headlines to this minute. The Ayatollah Khomeini says documents seized at the American Embassy in Tehran will be exhibited at a so-called conference on U.S. intervention in Iran. That opens tomorrow. 500 angry Cuban refugees storm out of the Fort Chaffee, Arkansas resettlement center, but they are quickly rounded up and returned to that center. President Carter visits with civil rights leader Vernon Jordan in a Fort Wayne hospital. He's recovering from a gunshot wound. Police launch a nationwide search for horse trainer Buddy Jacobson. He is scheduled to be sentenced Tuesday for killing his ex-girlfriend's lover. Coming up in the next hour, a live report from Key West.
Wir werden sterben, aber Deutschland muss leben, jetzt und immer.
He was a monster.
Und alles, was ich will ich nur durch euch allein. Sieg heil!
And his twisted dream exploded in a shattering blitzkrieg. World War II. Nobody covered the war like Time and Life magazines. Nobody can recreate World War II like the editors of Time Life books in this series that takes you from the hedgerows of Normandy to the sands of Iwo Jima. Follow the Panzer columns in Blitzkrieg. Take to the skies in the Battle of Britain. Encounter the U-boat wolf packs in the Battle of the Atlantic. Face the rising sun. The editors of Time Life books have deeply researched Allied and enemy archives, selected thousands of high-impact photographs from the history-making cameras of life's famous photographers and many others, discovered eyewitness accounts and exclusive new material to bring you the most momentous coverage of World War II ever attempted. Follow the rise of Adolf Hitler and Nazism in Prelude to War for 10 days free without obligation to buy. If you aren't impressed, return our book within 10 days and pay nothing. If you keep Prelude to War, pay just $9.95 plus shipping and handling. Then approximately every other month, we'll send you another volume in our series, each one on the same 10-day free examination basis. Keep only the volumes you want and cancel your subscription at any time. Here's how to get your copy.
To order your subscription to the World War II series, call 1-800-257-1257. In New Jersey, call 800-232-6966. Each book for $9.95 will be sent on a 10-day approval every other month.
Hello, we continue on the News Channel. I'm Lou Waters.
And I'm Renelda Muse.
President Carter left Camp David this afternoon and headed for Fort Wayne, Indiana, to visit wounded civil rights leader Vernon Jordan. Mr. Carter was to have visited Jordan on Friday, but canceled that trip at the last minute. Jordan's condition improved overnight, which is apparently why Mr. Carter chose today for the visit. We have our cable news cameras set up outside the White House. This is a live picture, and when the president returns to Washington, and he's expected momentarily, we'll have a live report.
As Lou just said, President Carter flew to Fort Wayne to visit Vernon Jordan. Before going to the hospital, the president met with local officials and FBI agents. Earlier, there were published reports that the Fort Wayne police and the FBI disagreed on how many shots were fired at Jordan. The president stressed the point that the local officials and the FBI were working well together.
I've also had a chance to meet with the mayor, with the police officials from the local government, and with the director of the FBI regional headquarters here in Fort Bend. And I think it's very good to point out that we have excellent cooperation, and that they are getting along well with each other. The local officials are very grateful that the FBI is involved in the investigation of the case, and I'm not going to comment on the progress of the investigation, except to point out to you that there is nothing in their relationship except one of mutual appreciation and the very closest possible cooperation.
Mr. Carter said he visited Jordan briefly and he was in good spirits. The president said he told Jordan to be sure to follow doctor's orders.
President Carter invited two cable news correspondents to the White House this weekend, Daniel Shore and George Watson. Among the topics discussed, Senator Edward Kennedy's challenge.
Are you expecting Senator Kennedy to withdraw?
No, I think that's a decision that must be made by him when to withdraw. If he decides to go all the way through the convention before he formally withdraws, that is part of our process, and we can accommodate that.
You can accept that?
Of course. I would not try to create any obstacle to Senator Kennedy's seeking or achieving the nomination in 1984. I don't know who will run, don't know if he has any ambitions beyond 1980. So that would be just a conjectural thing. My hope is that the Democrats will choose someone in 1984 to carry on the programs that we will have established by then. But I think I would rather not comment on who those candidates
But you would
might be
not push a candidate of your own for 1984, like Vice President Mondale, for example?
I would have to wait till later to make a judgment like that. That's when the campaign for 80 is over, then I'll answer your question.
You can see the entire interview with President Carter immediately following this broadcast. Senator Kennedy appeared on NBC's Meet the Press today. He was asked whether it really makes a difference who the president is.
One of the things that I have found in traveling this country for 7 months continuously is that many American people really are beginning to believe that no one can make a difference, no matter who we elect as President of the United States. And I think Mr. Carter, when he talked in his speech last summer about the malaise of the spirit of the American people, and when he constantly expresses, whether it is in the State of his Union speech, that a president really can't make a difference, and makes that kind of statement and a comment, that reinforces the concept, which is abroad in this land, that individuals can't make a difference and a president can't make a difference. I find that completely alien to everything I believe as an individual and everything that I believe as a Democrat. I think Franklin Roosevelt made a difference, Harry Truman made a difference, John Kennedy made a difference. And when I was in the well, when President Johnson said, "We shall overcome," and those words coming from a president of the United States sent a ripple across this country that we were no longer going to tolerate discrimination and bigotry in this nation, and he made a difference.
Yankee baseball star Reggie Jackson got in an argument over a parking space on New York's fashionable Upper East Side early this morning and allegedly had 3 shots fired at him. Angel Vieira has been charged with attempted murder. Jackson says he hopes the media doesn't make a big deal out of the fracas, but he says he was scared when he heard those gunshots.
A man apparently despondent over family problems vented his frustration on 3 unsuspecting passengers on an Amtrak train last night. It happened on the Washington to Boston route. A woman passenger and an Amtrak policeman were shot and critically wounded. Another train employee was shot in the hip. Police were alerted and the gunman was arrested when the train arrived in New London, Connecticut. The suspect has been charged with attempted murder.
A head-on car crash near Seminole, Texas has left 6 people dead. A policeman says the crash was the worst he's ever seen. He says both cars were ripped apart by the impact, and investigators are still trying to identify 4 of the bodies. All the dead were in the same car. Police say they were going down a highway when another car, moving against traffic, slammed into their car. The driver of the second car suffered only minor injuries.
The Mount St. Helens volcano is having its first quiet day in 3 weeks. It erupted May 18th with a force equal to an atomic bomb blast. 35 people are known dead. Dozens of others are missing. Officials say chances of finding any survivors now are slim. But geologists say a red lava dome inside the crater reduces the chances of further heavy ash eruptions. In nearby towns, the ash from earlier eruptions is still on the ground. Residents can do little to get rid of it. The fumes are still in the air, and many people wear surgical masks to filter the air and protect their lungs.
Nearly 4 years ago, Texas multimillionaire Cullen Davis was charged with killing 2 people and wounding his estranged wife at his Fort Worth mansion. A jury rendered a not guilty verdict. 2 years later, Cullen Davis was charged with trying to hire a killer to murder the judge in his divorce case. Again, Davis acquitted on the charges. Now Davis has made the news again. He and his family have announced they've accepted Christ and belong to a church in Euless, Texas. CNN's James Allen Miklashevsky reports.
Well, I went to church my young life, all of it in fact, and I dropped out from going to church probably about the time I graduated from high school and started to college. And just recently I decided to change that direction again and come back to the church.
Just a few months ago, you'd be likely to find millionaire Cullen Davis most anywhere on a Sunday morning but here. Now he, his new wife Karen, and her 2 sons devote every Sunday to worship and Bible studies at the First Baptist Church in Euless. His conversion to Christ came at the hands of evangelist James Robinson, who asked the congregation to begin praying for Davis as long as a year ago. But Robinson refuses to take credit.
I don't feel personally responsible. I am simply an instrument in God's hand to be used. And Cullen Davis is another person. He's no more important in God's sight than the little assistant that also accepted Christ, a college girl. He has an opportunity through visibility and through personal blessings that he's had in his life to perhaps affect many people with his life.
Robinson feels Davis has the ability to influence others towards Christianity, and after first refusing this interview, Davis yielded to his newfound religious calling.
After reflecting on that decision during the church services here, I thought I would change my mind and come do this interview because of the belief that I now have that Christians should get out of the closet, let people know that they're Christians.
Davis has been accepted by the congregation here not as a rich man who spent much of the past 4 years in jail, but as another Christian who has found his way with Christ.
I'm very happy with myself at the present time, and I hope to do everything I can to help the church and to help James Robinson and his ministry.
James Allen Miklashevsky, Cable News Network, Euless, Texas.
Coming up on the News Channel, an oil bomb explodes in London. Some Key West residents say the Cuban refugees are keeping tourists away. And a look at the latest weather with Flip Spiceland. Stay with us.
Do you know me? I ran for Vice President of the United States in '64, so I shouldn't have trouble charging a meal, should I? Well, I do. That's why I carry an American Express card. I use it in stores, restaurants, airlines, and hotels all over the world. In Tokyo, Paris, and in upstate New York. Why, with this, they treat me as though I'd won.
To apply for a card, call 800-528-8000.
The American Express card. Don't leave home without it.
There are many medications for acid indigestion or heartburn relief. Which one is right for you? For years, Maalox has been recommended most by doctors. Now, the antacid ingredients in here, plus an extra ingredient, are in Maalox Plus tablets. Really pleasant tasting and effective. And Maalox Plus tablets also come in this handy pocket pack that keeps them fresh and sanitary. Maalox Plus for acid indigestion or heartburn relief. But don't just take my word for it. Try Maalox Plus tablets. You'll find you can't do better.
Clinton, Colorado. The sun hammers your eyes to a tight squint and cracks your throat with a dry, parched-out thirst. But one thing washes it clean. Nestea.
All over. Nestea tastes good all over. All over. Nestea tastes good all over.
No sugar, no bubbles, no additives. Just clean, light, pure tea.
Whether you drive a big car or a small car, if you aren't getting the gas mileage you should, maybe your car is having foot trouble. Remember, fuel economy is measured by the foot as well as the mile. When you step on the gas, step lightly, as if there were an egg under your foot. For a free booklet on more ways to save gas, write MVMA, Post Office Box 9009, Northeast Station, Detroit, Michigan, 48202.
Here's a quick glance at the headlines to the minute. President Carter warns Iran not to try the American hostages as spies for the first time in several weeks. Mount St. Helens is quiet today. Saudi Arabia may be raising the price of oil again. The authoritative Lundberg letter says the oil glut may produce gas wars in the U.S. again. Coming up, a report from Key West on the Cuban refugees, and Flip Spiceland standing by with a weather outlook. Now back to Reynalda and Lou.
In the Florida Straits, rough seas and high winds kept Cuban refugees out of their boats today. CNN's Mike Betcher is in Key West. He says the port is quiet. For more on the story, let's go live to Key West and Mike Betcher.
Cuban annex at Key West Harbor is the most quiet it has been since the boat lift began 1 month ago. But military officials here estimate that between 250 and 300 boats still remain in Muriel Harbor in Havana, Cuba.
We're having a little bit of problem with the audio portion of that. We'll try and correct that and get back to Mike in Key West. Reynalda?
America isn't the only country where people are unemployed. Dennis McIntosh takes a look now at the job situation in Peking.
Private Osvaldo Cepero is one of several hundred Marines sent here to aid the Freedom Flotilla. But he is different from the others. In 1966, Private Cepero came to this country as a 5-year-old refugee from Cuba. He views the Freedom Flotilla from two perspectives, that of a Marine and of a Cuban American.
Like I said, I'm Cuban born. I lived in the United States 15 years of my life. I'm only 20 years old, but I have a special feeling for these people because I feel like I have a bigger demand to help them, being since I am the same nationality. And not to take nothing away from here, but I feel good about helping them just, because of the fact that they're my own people, you see.
Private Osvaldo Cepero says he looks forward to the time when he can return to a liberated Cuba.
If it was liberated, I would. I really would like to. I mean, maybe not to stay, because like I said, I've been here most of my life, and I like it here. I'm settled down. I mean, my family's settled down here. But I would like to visit, my homeland someday, and I hope pretty soon.
Mike Betcher, Cable News Network, Key West.
Saudi Arabia, the world's leading oil exporter, is reportedly working on a plan to restore pricing unity within OPEC. Now, to do it, the Saudis may boost their oil prices by $4 a barrel and cut back on production, but only if other oil producers freeze their prices for the rest of 1980. A time-release bomb exploded and damaged one of London's most expensive shopping streets this morning. Scotland Yard says there's no clear motive, but the explosion may have been tied to Iranian revenge. Here's more from Paul Tilsley.
The bomb was left here in the doorway of the company's offices. The device had a delayed action timing mechanism. It was quite unlike anything Scotland Yard's terrorist squad has seen recently. The explosion shattered windows and ruined displays over a long stretch of Britain's most exclusive shopping street. The bomb went off at 1:30 this morning, and detectives are calling on Saturday night revelers for help.
We're appealing for any witnesses who were in this area during the late last evening and in the early hours to come forward and speak to us in case they've got useful information as to who was loitering in front of the premises.
No one's claimed responsibility yet. As work began on clearing up the damage, only one motive was being put forward by London's Arab community. An attempt was made to assassinate Iranian Foreign Minister Sadek Ghozbadeh when he was in Kuwait exactly a month ago. And this could have been a reprisal. Paul Tilsley, ITN, New Bond Street, London.
The Soviets appear to be more and more concerned about their energy resources. A front-page story in Pravda condemns the Russian oil refining industry for what it called bureaucratic paper shuffling and inefficient mismanagement. The article accused the industry of lowering its production goals during the early stages of a yearly plan so as to appear to have exceeded them later. Pravda said the remedy is to improve discipline and increase the party's voice in the industry. Storms ripped across parts of the country's midsection last night. Several tornadoes touched down in central Illinois, destroying property and injuring several people. In Nebraska, it was heavy rain that caused problems. The rain and hail washed out fields and damaged crops, but there were no reports of injuries. Now, weatherman Flip Spiceland is here to tell us more about those storms and the rest of the country's weather. Flip?
Oh, that is right, Raynelda. The storms moved out of Nebraska and into the Illinois area. You know, they say nothing is so rare as a day in June. Well, severe weather was anything but rare today. Let's take a look at our satellite picture, and you'll see that severe weather activity. It was right in here in the midwestern section of the country, and it is moving on to the east. Now, this cloud cover that you see here in northern Missouri and southern Iowa moved into Illinois early today, and that touched off some more severe weather. As a matter of fact, tornadoes were reported in sections of Illinois today. In the towns of Tuscola, Illinois, there were tornadoes. In the towns of Villa Park, there were tornadoes. And in Speedway, Indiana, that's the home of the Indianapolis 500, just outside of Indianapolis, they also reported a tornado today. All of this tornado activity is associated with this low-pressure center and warm front and cold front. The warm front delineates very warm, moist air coming from the south as a low-pressure disturbance and associated cold front moves through. Thunderstorm activity will continue throughout that section of the country tonight. In addition to the tornadoes, there was also some wind damage in Macon County, Illinois, the northern part of the county. A tree fell on a house, did some damage there. We have no injuries to report, however. And just northeast of St. Louis, Missouri, in Alton, Illinois, they reported golf ball size hail. Now, it is the first day of June, but winter is still with us. There's a cold front approaching from the Pacific Northwest. This one started up in the Gulf of Alaska, and it's touching off some bad weather up there. Actually, not that bad, just showery activity right now. But as this moves across the Rockies, there is a winter storm watch in effect for the eastern slopes of the Rockies tonight and tomorrow. So when overnight low temperatures drop down to around the 30-degree mark, they could see some snow on the eastern slopes of the Rockies. Down into California, things were beautiful today, a nice sunny day. However, this approaching cold front could touch off a little bit of drizzle in the San Francisco Bay Area tomorrow. So, in the forecast, for our viewers in the Santa Clara Valley, in the city of San Jose, California, you can expect a chance of drizzle early in the morning, and then a sunny afternoon with a high around 78 degrees. If you're watching in San Diego, California, you can expect a mostly cloudy day with only partial clearing late in the day. You should see a high temperature around 75. And back into the Midwest, in the windy city of Chicago, Illinois, partly cloudy skies tomorrow, and late in the day, you're still going to be plagued with a chance of a thunderstorm. Will be a little bit cooler, high temperature tomorrow only of 82 degrees, and humidity should begin to drop a little bit too. That's the weather picture up to the minute. Now back over to Lou.
Thank you, Flip. This just in, rioting and violence have broken out at the Fort Chaffee Processing Center where thousands of Cuban refugees are living. About 1,000 Cubans have destroyed barricades and tried for the third time in 2 days to break out of that camp. There have been reports of gunfire, and one refugee says a fellow Cuban has been shot. At least one reporter covering the situation was attacked by the crowd. A spokesman for the government says no one has escaped from the camp. We'll keep you posted. Farmers are losing money this season, but consumers are getting a break on some meat prices.
The Corn Belt has experienced the best planting conditions in years. A mild winter allowed farmers to get into the fields early this year, and most corn and soybeans were planted ahead of schedule. In fact, 60 miles west of Chicago in DeKalb County, the corn is already breaking ground. Despite the potential for bumper crops, it doesn't appear to be a good year for DeKalb County farmer Tom Fenstermaker. Fenstermaker raises hogs. Because there's a glut of pork on the market, he's losing about $14.50 for every hog he takes to market.
We aren't now, and I'm afraid we're not going to be at even break-even prices on our products, our corn and our soybeans and our hogs. So.
But Fenstermaker's loss is the consumer's gain. He says pork is now one of the best buys in the supermarket.
Good time to fill the freezer, I would say. If I was a consumer not involved in agriculture, I certainly would.
Just down the road from Fenstermaker, farmer Ray Larson is also facing a tough year. He says the sagging economy has cut consumer demand for beef. He's losing $45 to $80 for every steer he ships to market.
It's not going to be a big money-making year. We realize that. You just hope that you can survive this year and be around to come back again.
In response to what they consider to be low prices, hog and cattle raisers say they're cutting back drastically on their herds this year. While meat prices favor consumers right now, a shrinking supply of hogs and cattle means higher consumer prices later on. Richard Blome, Cable News Network, in DeKalb County, Illinois.
Coming up on the news channel, the latest in what's happening in Washington from CNN's Bernard Shaw, and a review of The Empire Strikes Back. Those stories and more as the news continues. Stay with us.
Energy. A problem affecting everyone. The WTBS Energy and the Way We Live series attempted to answer some of the energy questions we all face in 3 two-hour programs. Because of the series' importance, WTBS will present 6 one-hour shows comprised of the best from the WTBS Energy series. It's our attempt to face some important questions. It's important television. That's why it's on the Superstation.
How many cold tablets do you take a day? 2?
More.
4?
More.
6?
Yes, 6.
A day? And then more at night? Why?
They're new.
Ever try Contact?
No.
Watch. One Contact helps relieve your congestion for up to 12 hours without the aspirin substitute and cough suppressant in these. Just one more Contact helps you all night while you sleep.
You're the guys on TV.
Give your cold to Contact.
It has a lot of headroom. I can feel right here.
We're eavesdropping with hidden cameras as a big car owner test drives the new Aspen.
I would imagine this car gets pretty darn good gas mileage out of this 6-cylinder engines.
For under $5,200, the Aspen has 6-passenger room automatic transmission, power steering, white walls, and more.
I could buy 3 of these for what I paid for my Cadillac.
Come to the Dodge Celebration Sale. Get a $300 rebate on specially tagged Aspens.
It's time for another miracle. It's time to cure diabetes. You can make this miracle happen by supporting your American Diabetes Association.
Here's what's happening in the news right now. We have just learned rioting has broken out at the Fort Chaffee Cuban Refugee Relocation Center in Arkansas. We understand about 1,000 Cuban refugees have broken out in rioting there. Some shots have reported to have been fired. We're checking into the situation. We'll have more on that momentarily. Border fighting between Iraq and Iran kills 80 Iraqi troops, according to Iran. Israeli Prime Minister Begin puts off a cabinet crisis today by filling the post of defense minister himself. Tornadoes and strong winds ripped through central Illinois, injuring several people today. President Carter visits a recovering Vernon Jordan at the Fort Wayne, Indiana hospital. Coming up, a live report from Washington and a review of the Star Wars sequel, The Empire Strikes Back.
Now for the latest on what's happening in our nation's capital, here's CNN's Bernard Shaw.
Air Force General David Jones, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, says he has no apologies to make to anybody for his record. In a Washington Post interview today, Jones claims partial credit for a rise in defense spending and President Carter's decision to keep troops in South Korea. Jones says the United States needs a new strategic bomber, and he regrets President Carter's decision to kill the B-1 program. The general has been reappointed to a new 2-year term by the president, but faces opposition at Senate confirmation hearings this month. Since mid-March, 1,800 Marines have been on station in the Arabian Sea because of the crises in Iran and Afghanistan. Now the Pentagon says they're coming home. Correspondent Dave Browdy has a report.
The Marines are coming home from the Indian Ocean, mostly because there's little for them to do there right now. They were ordered into the area in the middle of February, at the height of the post-Afghanistan invasion tension. They've been there ever since on board 4 amphibious ships, with only 2 port calls in the entire 4.5 months. Even after the Marines come home, the United States will still have some 25 ships in the Indian Ocean. The Soviet Union will have approximately the same number. But as tensions have seemingly cooled, Pentagon planners no longer feel it necessary to keep the Marines on standby in the Indian Ocean. Though as part of their withdrawal announcement, a spokesman here said the Marines can be ordered back into the area at any time if they are needed. And in fact, a buildup of U.S. forces in the Indian Ocean is expected later this month. 7 ships are to leave the United States carrying cargo to staff an entire Marine amphibious brigade. I'm Dave Browdy, the Pentagon, Cable News Network.
Ronald Reagan and wife Nancy are thinking about renting a house designed and built by Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. According to today's Washington Post, the Reagans are deciding whether to move into the house in a 46-acre estate in the Virginia Hunt Country near Middleburg. Reagan is moving his national campaign headquarters from Los Angeles to Arlington, Virginia to be close to Washington, and the Reagans want a house nearby. And that's the latest from our Cable News Bureau in Washington.
A diplomat's wife has found out the hard way what many New Yorkers already know: never open your door to strangers. The wife of a Ghanaian attaché to the UN told her doorman that it was okay to send up the 2 men who had flowers to deliver to her, but it was a mistake. When she opened the door, the men showed weapons and began to beat her. They left only after she showed them where her jewelry was kept. The woman has since recovered from her injuries, but she and her children are now afraid to stay in their Manhattan apartment. Her husband has another year to complete of his UN assignment.
Faces in the news today. Anyone who thinks show business is a matter of making big bucks the easy way should really confer with Patty Duke Aston and Dave Burney. They've just finished filming Time Life's new telefeature, Mom, the Wolfman, and Me. One scene involved a 60-second bicycle sequence, but they had a little trouble getting it just right. Before the scene was in the can, they'd pedaled a total of 200 miles. Mel Brooks is at it again. Mel conquered the Wild West with Blazing Saddles and followed up with Silent Movie, but he's not satisfied. In his newest feature, soon to be before the cameras in Hollywood, he'll co-star with Richard Pryor, Dom DeLuise, Harvey Korman, Cloris Leachman, Shecky Green, and Madeline Kahn. The new title, Mel Brooks, History of the World, Part 1. Gong Show creator Chuck Barris has been named this year's Grand Gobbler by the National Organization for Women. The group says he was chosen on the grounds he's consistently demeaned women and shown overall lack of good taste. His award, a live turkey, will be accompanied by a note reading, "Chuck, included with this turkey are instructions on how to stuff it."
Lou, people are standing in line to see the sequel to Star Wars, but CNN's movie critic thinks The Empire Strikes Back can't match the original. Here's Fred Sachs.
957. We're on our way.
Those huge contraptions are death-dealing machines of the Empire and part of their aggression in the film called The Empire Strikes Back. The Great American Cereal is not a breakfast food, but something that you get hooked on at the theater. First with Star Wars, and then second with The Empire. But if Star Wars was a 10, Empire Strikes Back is only an 8.5. Why? Because this sequel to the biggest film of all time has a real reputation to live up to, and even with the addition of some new characters, like the lovable Yoda. He's an authority on the proper use of the Force, and Billy D. Williams, he's a rogue who gets duped by the bad guys. Even with these additions, the ending of Empire and the implied invitation to see the next sequel comes too soon. Not that the picture is short, because it's not. But the ending, which leaves a number of questions unanswered, seems to approach with almost the speed of light.
Luke, go to the trap!
Basically, it's the story of good against evil. Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, and Han Solo are all in good health, but just a little older. Darth Vader is still around, and this time he offers a few surprises and a shocking statement of who he really is. But we'll have to wait till next time to see if he's telling the truth and what are the consequences, or if Darth is just creating a farce about the Force. In Hollywood, I'm Fred Saxon, Cable News Network.
And coming up on the news channel, civil rights leader Vernon Jordan may soon be released from the intensive care unit. 9 states gearing up for Tuesday's presidential primaries, and a live report from CNN in New York. Stay with us.
Headlining the news at this hour, President Carter visits civil rights leader Vernon Jordan at a Fort Wayne, Indiana hospital today, and he tells newsmen he knows of no motive for that shooting. 1,000 Cuban refugees are rioting at the Fort Chaffee, Arkansas Relocation Center. We're working on a live telephone report at this hour. Meanwhile, the flow of refugees into Miami is slowing down. Deep Throat star Linda Lovelace joins a feminist protest against that film. Coming up on the news channel, CNN's Bill Zimmerman reporting live from Los Angeles with a preview of the California primary. And at the sports desk, today's baseball highlights and Kemper Golf Open. Lou?
A few minutes ago, we had some microwave problems getting in a report from Mike Betcher in Key West, where he's looking into the Cuban refugee boat lift as it stands today. So we'll go back now, since we have things all under control. And here's Mike Betcher.
Annex, right after sunset, is the quietest it has been since the boat lift began 1 month ago. But military officials still estimate there are between 250 and 300 boats in Mariel Harbor. Now, 2 of those boats are reported to be larger boats, one perhaps a medium freighter that could hold up to 1,500 refugees. It is called the Red Diamond. And we received reports this evening that one of those reported freighters, may try to go to Costa Rica instead of coming to Key West to avoid having their ship confiscated and to avoid the fines. We will have further confirmation on that later this evening. For the last week and for the last month during this boat lift, most of the people arriving here have been young males. Some have been in prison, but most are young males who have no family here, who know no one. There's been a great debate what to do with these people, how they will affect the economy. Well, one colonel, Colonel Juan Montez of the Joint Contingency Task Force for the Caribbean, set up by President Carter to deal with the Russian presence in Cuba. Colonel Montez has an idea of how to deal with that. And Colonel, how would you deal with these young men who know no one here? What would you do with them?
Well, this is not only my idea, it's a suggestion that was made by other Cubans and Cuban Americans and Americans, and it's to get this Cuban force into the armed forces as it was done during the missile crisis in 1962, creating a Cuban unit. This will solve 3 problems. First, it will give an opportunity to these Cubans how to learn the laws rather quickly and to get used to our ways in the United States and also learn the language. Second, it will solve their economic problem immediately. And third, it will be a force in being in the event of an emergency or contingency in South America or Central America.
Some of these men have been in prison. Would they be receptive to joining an American Army unit?
I'm sure they will. I don't believe the majority have been in prison. If they have been in prison, it's for special crimes that exist in Cuba. Otherwise, they will not be. But I'm sure they will join the armed forces voluntarily.
Now, as we said earlier, you work with the Joint Contingency Task Force for the Caribbean. You're very familiar with the Russian presence in Cuba. Do you fear that many of the people arriving here may be Cuban agents? You're familiar with this area.
Well, that's a possibility. We haven't been able to detect or have an exact number of agents, but it's always that possibility. Perhaps 10 in 1,000 will be Cuban agents, but we don't know. We don't have a figure.
How would this affect the security of the area that you're in charge of or work with protecting?
I don't think we'll have any effect whatsoever. We have good security provided here by the marshals, the police, the Marines, and they're all doing a tremendous job here with security.
One final question, sir. You were the first Cuban to become an American officer in the Army. You're very familiar with the people coming here, why they're coming here. How do you feel about the whole boat lift?
Well, I believe that the majority of the people left Cuba for the human rights violations in Cuba, the economic conditions, and they found an opportunity to come to this great nation when President Carter allowed them with an open arms policy to come over here. I think this is a humanitarian effort, and I'm sure the Cuban people thanks always the United States for that.
Thank you, sir. Later this evening, if we have any breaking developments on the Cuban boat lift, if it restarts again, we will break in live. Mike Betcher, Cable News Network, Key West.
Thank you, Mike. On Tuesday, Ohio will join 8 other states in choosing presidential favorites. Sources say the economy is a big issue to the steel and automobile workers who comprise a large percentage of Ohio voters. CNN's Bob Berkowitz went to Cleveland to find out how workers there plan to vote.
There's only one way to describe the economy in this part of Ohio: dismal. Massive layoffs in the steel and auto industries are the rule of the day, and prospects for the future aren't good. Going into the final weekend before the Ohio primary, the news could not have been worse for President Carter. He campaigned here late last week, telling Ohio voters that the economy is on the rebound.
Our nation is strong. It's getting stronger. We face challenges now. We've faced more difficult challenges in the past. Our nation is united.
But the day after the president left the state, the word was that another 8,500 auto workers were being laid off. They'll be joining thousands of other Ohioans who recently went on the unemployment rolls. All this in the part of the state where 60% of Ohio's Democrats live. Well, despite all the plant closings and layoffs, the polls show Kennedy lagging behind Carter. A lot of the auto workers who drop by here for a beer say they're not thrilled with President Carter. That doesn't necessarily translate into support for Senator Kennedy.
I would say the economy is kind of shaky, but I wouldn't blame it on Carter because there's other presidents in there before that really did a job on us, like Nixon when he froze our wages. That's what really put us behind.
I'd vote for Carter before I'd vote for Kennedy.
What is that?
Well, Kennedy gets in, we're going to be in need for trouble.
Why is that?
Well, right now, Kennedy is like he had that trouble before with that woman and all that.
I think Carter's got his stuff together. Kennedy, I don't think he can be trusted. There's too much power in the Kennedy family.
This survey is unscientific, but those who support Kennedy here view the senator as the only alternative they have for now.
Well, I don't know. I think Mr. Carter's a little inconsistent. He don't seem to follow his promises. He don't keep his promises. He breaks a lot of promises.
Hey, I had to go for Kennedy, man.
Why'd you vote for Kennedy?
Hey, I feel good. Hey, we done voted for all the rest of them. They ain't done nothing for the country. Hey, we got to have somebody to represent our country.
Well, I would vote for Kennedy, but I like to vote for Carter. But Carter's too soft-hearted. The public going to chew him up.
The Kennedy people point out that the laid-off auto workers aren't hurting right now, that they're still getting 90% of their pay. Nevertheless, Edward Kennedy has made the worsening economy the focus of his campaign here. But the polls indicate that as of now, Ohio Democrats are apparently not ready to dump Jimmy Carter yet. Bob Berkowitz in Cleveland, Cable News Network.
Moments ago, we reported on an outbreak of violence and rioting at the Fort Chaffee Processing Center where Cuban refugees are being held in Arkansas. With more on that story now, Susan Oakes on the news line from Fort Smith and KFSA Radio. Susan, what do you know?
Well, the details on that escape are rather sketchy at this time. We do understand that Governor Clinton is en route to the base and that he has placed the Arkansas National Guard on alert at the base. We were notified at 7:21 this evening that by a spokesman from Sebastian County Sheriff's Department that there was an uprising. They called it an uprising at Fort Chaffee, and that all civilian personnel were ordered to stay away from the area.
Susan, earlier in the week, the residents near Fort Chaffee made certain threats if Cuban refugees were to break out. Do you have any idea if any of the residents in the area are involved in any of this?
I do know that there have been an awful lot of telephone calls, not only to our station, but to several others, and that the residents of the area are very, very alarmed at this time. However, we don't have any details as to any residents having, participated within this situation this afternoon.
An early report that we received indicated that a reporter covering the Fort Chaffee Center had been shot. Can you verify that?
No, sir, I cannot. I can verify that 3 military policemen have been injured and are hospitalized at this time. However, we don't have details as to the extent of their injuries, and we do not have any information as to a newsperson having been injured. Our newsperson, Karen Santos from KFSA, is out in the area of Fort Chaffee at this time, and I'm expecting a telephone call from her at any time with further details on the situation there.
Okay, Susan, we'll be back in touch with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Susan Oakes, and as information becomes available, we will let you know. That's reported rioting and violence at the Fort Chaffee Processing Center for Cuban Refugees in Arkansas, where trouble has been brewing for most of the week. National Guard troops had been sent in earlier in the week, so they should be well manned there tonight. Continuing now with the news, the largest state holding a primary this Tuesday is California. Our Bill Zimmerman has been covering the California primary. He's with us now live in our studios in Los Angeles with a report. Bill?
This was to have been the big one, California, June 3rd, with 306 Democratic delegates to be awarded on a proportional basis, and on the Republican side, a winner-take-all contest with 168 delegates to go to the victor. But now with President Carter only a handful of delegates short of the number he needs, and Ronald Reagan apparently over the top and with no apparent remaining competition, the presidential contest in this state should be anticlimactic. Nevertheless, elections officials here expect nearly 7 million of the state's 10.5 million registered voters to go to the polls Tuesday, drawn there by 3 statewide pocketbook issues called Proposition 9, Proposition 10, and Proposition 11. Proposition 9 marks the return of Howard Jarvis, who captured the attention of the nation 2 years ago when he spearheaded the successful drive for Proposition 13, a massive property tax cut. This time, Jarvis wants to slash the state income tax, and CNN's Bryce Zabel has a report.
Californians will pay close to $7 billion into state coffers this year with their personal income taxes, unless Proposition 9 passes. It sets the tax rates at half of what they were in 1978, in effect a 50% tax cut. Howard Jarvis, the man behind Proposition 13, is also pushing this constitutional amendment, sometimes called JAWS 2. It's been attacked as welfare for the rich, but Jarvis says that's totally false.
For instance, to say a low-income man pays $200 income tax a year, and a high-income man pays $1,000. The high-income man pays 5 times as much as the low-income man. So Proposition 9 passes. Now the low-income man pays $100, and the high-income man pays $500. It's exactly what it is today.
Millions of senior citizens and millions of other people hardly pay any state income taxes. Most of the taxes they pay are to the federal government or are sales taxes.
And that's the problem with Proposition 9. It provides real tax relief if you have a very substantial income, but it provides little, if any, tax relief for just about everybody else.
Opponents also fear the uncertain state of the economy. They admit if inflation and consumer spending continue, the sales tax could make up part of the estimated $4.9 billion shortfall the first year. But a serious recession, they say, would mean a reduction in revenue, even without Proposition 9.
So it comes down to a question of whether we're going to have inflation or a recession, or what is it? Well, nobody knows, and that's really the point. Anybody that says that they know exactly what the economy is going to do is either kidding themselves or kidding the public.
My reaction is, if they do have a recession, it's much better for the people to have the money than the bureaucrats.
But will there be money for the school system? It's a question that was first raised before the passage of Proposition 13, and it's being raised again. And what about firefighters, police, and other providers of essential services? Will California flame out for lack of money if Proposition 9 passes? Governor Jerry Brown says it might this time. Brown argues the days of budget surpluses are over, so there's no bailout option.
I think it is bad government, and it's unnecessary. I think people finally figured out what's going on with Mr. Jarvis.
If my style of telling the truth that's been proven for years, if that's going to lose an election, we're going to lose it.
The polls indicate that California voters have gone full circle on Proposition 9, initially favoring it and now opposing it by a wide margin. And even that could change, especially if voters buy the argument on Election Day that a vote for Proposition 9 is nothing more than a vote for a personal pay raise. Bryce Zabel, Cable News Network, Los Angeles.
The other two propositions that will draw voters to the polls here Tuesday concern rent control and a state surtax on oil company incomes. We'll have more on those in later reports. As to the presidential races, recent polls show President Carter and Senator Kennedy running virtually neck and neck on the Democratic side, with a large number of voters still undecided. With virtually no opposition left, Ronald Reagan is expected to run away with the Republican primary. I'm Bill Zimmerman, Cable News Network in Los Angeles.
Vernon Jordan's doctor says the civil rights leader may soon be out of intensive care. President Carter visited Jordan today as Jordan recovers from gunshot wounds he received on Thursday. The president told Jordan to follow his doctor's advice and then said he wanted the FBI and Fort Wayne police to work together to find Jordan's assailant. Mr. Jordan is in serious but stable condition at Parkview Memorial Hospital. He suffered 2 gunshot wounds, one nearly the size of a fist in his back, another superficial wound in the leg. Jordan's doctor, Jeffrey Toll, says the civil rights leader is progressing smoothly.
Reggie Jackson, the Yankee outfielder, was reportedly the target of a gunman today. It happened on a New York street corner. For more, we switch live to Mary Alice Williams in New York.
Reggie Jackson was out celebrating his game-winning home run, and by the end of the night, a Manhattan man had been charged with trying to kill him. Jackson and 25-year-old Angel Vieira apparently argued over a parking space. The argument ended, police say, with Vieira tossing a couple of bottles at Jackson's car, and Jackson and 2 fans chasing him down the street. Witnesses say Vieira returned and fired 3 gunshots at Jackson.
They had the driver of the car. There were like 3 cops with guns on him. They got Reggie up a little bit further by his car. They were trying to cool him down. But it was a circus. I've never seen so many cops get to a scene so quick. I think there were 2 on the corner that saw it happen originally. They radioed in, and the next thing you know, there were police all over the place. Every one of them had their guns out.
Shots missed Jackson, but hit an awning and a window nearby. Jackson has decided to press charges, and he did not play in today's game against the Toronto Blue Jays. Police today charged a Connecticut man with attempted murder. 29-year-old Fred Banks apparently opened fire on board an Amtrak passenger train between Boston and New York. The bullets hit a conductor, a security guard, and a woman passenger. The woman and the conductor are in critical condition tonight. The guard is stable. The shots rang out shortly after the conductor asked Banks for his ticket. New York City Mayor Edward Koch may soon address the Republican National Convention's Platform Committee, even though he's a Democrat. Koch has, in the New York Times, it's reported that Koch has accepted an invitation to appear before the panel officially. Koch's aide said the offer is under study. The mayor was once an enthusiastic supporter of President Carter, but recently Koch has made no secret of his unhappiness with the Carter administration's proposed cuts in aid to large cities. The 16th annual Salute to Israel parade marched up New York's Fifth Avenue today. The marchers celebrated the 32nd anniversary of Israel's independence and their own love for the Jewish homeland, as Joanne Lee reports.
A Salute to Israel parade, and thousands turned out for the march down Fifth Avenue. Marching bands, floats, and lots of smiling faces stretching for blocks. This was a great day for a parade to demonstrate solidarity and support for Israel.
The parade itself has no political meaning. It is just fun to the children that march in it, and it's our expression of support for the state of Israel. It's also the first time after the Jewish holidays that we can have a parade.
We love Israel. I'm waving my flag.
Flag waving was just about everywhere, spectators included.
Israel for me means everything. I lost my whole family in the Holocaust. My whole family, parents, sisters, the whole family, children, nothing is left. But Israel really means to me everything.
The parade was organized by the American Zionist Youth Foundation. It's been an annual event in New York since 1965, and many New Yorkers look forward to it as a very important event.
We're American Jews, so our interest lies with both the United States and America, and it's a very thrilling thing for us.
Joanne Lee in New York, Cable News Network.
That's it from New York. I'm Mary Alice Williams.
Coming up, CNN Sports with Fred Hickman. Stay with us.
Somewhere in these Chiricahua hills, no white man will ever know where, the Apaches buried Cochise, the greatest of their great chiefs. Geronimo faded into these hills, and it took 5,000 U.S. soldiers to bring him out. And now Time Life Books brings the great chiefs to life again as your introductory volume to a fast-writing series called The Old West. Hundreds of authentic pictures give you the real story. For the first time ever, you'll be able to see Geronimo's combat dagger and Colt 45. You'll look into the eyes of Sitting Bull, the man who destroyed Custer. Quanah Parker, the fierce Comanche whose mother was a captured farm girl, and all the great chiefs. Eyewitness accounts and rare photographs and art bring the Old West to life. You'll meet the gunfighters. Men like John Wesley Hardin, so mean he once shot a man just for snoring. The cowboys, blazed in glory by the greatest artists of the Old West. The pioneers, battling the savage elements and bloodthirsty war parties. The gamblers, the women of the West. They're all here in big, handsome books with the look and feel of hand-tooled saddle leather. We'll send you the great chiefs for a free 10-day examination. If you're not impressed, just return it within 10 days and pay nothing. If you decide to keep the great chiefs, you pay just $9.95 plus shipping and handling. Then approximately every other month, we'll send you another lively volume from the Old West Library, free for a 10-day examination. Keep only the volumes you want. You can cancel at any time. Here's how to order.
To order your subscription to the Old West books, call toll-free 1-800-257-1257. In Hawaii, call 536-6677. Each book for $9.95 will be sent for a 10-day approval, approximately every other month.
Here are the headlines to the minute. Governor Clinton of Arkansas is reported on his way to the Fort Chaffee Cuban Refugee Center, where rioting and violence is reported to have broken out, we have learned. The PLO group Al-Fatah pledges to, in their words, liquidate the Zionist entity in the Middle East. President Carter visits Vernon, Jordan today. Officials there still are baffled by the sniper attack on the civil rights leader. And storms and tornadoes ripped central Illinois, injuring several people today. Still to come on the News Channel. A live report from New York on financial news, and the wealthy Hunt brothers speak out. Lou?
Lots of baseball today. CNN sportsman Fred Hickman is here to tell us about it.
Thank you, Lou. We did have a full Sunday schedule. Let's get right to the scoreboard and see where we stand right now. First, from the American League, it was the Toronto Blue Jays losing a big one to the New York Yankees, 11-7, the final from Yankee Stadium. Milwaukee got past Boston 8-5. California, Detroit, and Baltimore, Minnesota both fell subject to rain today. They've been postponed and rescheduled. In the American League West, we have Chicago beating Kansas City 6-1, and Seattle edging Cleveland 8-7. Oakland and Texas coming up a little bit later tonight. Over in the National League, the New York Mets lost a big one to Pittsburgh this afternoon, 13-3, the final score in that one. Berra with a grand slam homer. It was Chicago Cubs over Philadelphia 5-4. Montreal getting past St. Louis. Cardinals cannot win, 7-6 the final in 12 innings. Atlanta beat Los Angeles 9-5, and Houston lost to San Francisco 6-2. Cincinnati Reds beat San Diego 7-6. Well, that big red machine in Cincinnati has begun to warm up in the National League's Western Division. They moved into San Diego today where they edged the Padres, as I told you just a moment ago. Here's a look at some of the action. The San Diego Chicken warmed up to the occasion, expecting some big things to happen, and he got them. Here, Junior Kennedy doubles off the wall in left field. Ray Knight was aboard. Knight scooted around and scored the second Cincinnati run of the game. They led 2-0 at this point. Later, the Reds up 3-0. Dave Concepcion sends a soft liner into right field. Collins was on base here and proceeded to score, but Concepcion, trying to stretch the single into a double, was gunned down, and it was 4-0 Reds. Padres came back trailing 4-2. Dave Winfield, a single off of Soto. Mumphrey comes home with the Padres' third tally of the game. But the man of the hour was John Bench. He ripped a homer here to left field, 8th inning, for his 20th RBI of the season. That's number 1,210 in his career. He's number 2 on the all-time list for catchers, and the Reds win it 7-6, the final score. In golf, John Mahaffey took today's final round of the $400,000 Kemper Open, fired a 2-under par 68 today with birdies on both the 17th and 18th holes, finished the tournament at 275. And on the LPGA Tour, it was Beth Daniel taking the LPGA New Rochelle tournament, her first win since the Patty Berg Classic last year. Daniel was the only player to break par. Her final score was 1-under 287. Joanne Washam and Nancy Lopez Melton tied for second at 1 over par with 289s. And that's sports.
I'm definitely not Rinalda at the anchor desk. But I can tell you we are going to now switch live to the White House. We told you earlier that President Carter had visited Fort Wayne, Indiana, and was returning to the White House. Mark Walton is standing by now with a live report.
The president returned here to the White House by helicopter about 15 minutes ago, stopping only briefly to chat with reporters. He said that Vernon Jordan is doing well, is now able to have a few guests in his hospital room, and is expected to recover completely. A couple of hours ago out in Fort Wayne, the president had somewhat more of an elaborate news conference. The president would not divulge very much information about his chat with Jordan. He wouldn't say whether the men had discussed the shooting, for instance. He was asked several times by reporters whether he thinks there was a conspiracy, and he said he had no information to divulge, but the impression was left, with meetings with the FBI and local police, that Carter now knows a great deal more than before he went out today, and that he's very much up on the investigation. The president would not get involved in a discussion about possible connections between the Jordan shootings and the Miami riots, but obviously that was one of the considerations he had in mind when he went out to Fort Wayne. Black leaders are calling on the president to guarantee a thorough investigation and to guarantee that there will be no cover-up. And for Carter, not only black votes ride on such an investigation, but so do chances for avoiding another Miami. Mark Walton, Cable News, the White House.
And we'll be back after this word. Stay with us.